Excellent. Good morning, everyone. We would like to now reconvene the RDI TPA work group meeting. As mentioned yesterday, work group members who participate remotely will need to disclose if any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at the remote location. And also please share the general nature of the member's relationship with any such individuals. Are there any disclosures from our work group members online?
No disclosures.
No disclosures.
No disclosure.
No disclosures.
Are we correct that it's the four work group members online? Great. Let's take roll. So as a reminder, work group members who are participating via Zoom must be visible at all times on camera. Please log off Zoom if you need to leave the meeting and log in when you're ready to join the meeting again. If you experience any broadband or internet connectivity problems while participating, that would be remedied by joining without video. You must announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera, please. We will now take roll. Recording secretary, will you please call the roll?
Evan Beasley.
Here.
Alyssa Brown. Here. Trisha Camarel. Kathy Gracia.
Here.
Alia Diaz-Catano. Rand Dunford. Nessa Escobar. Isla Estrada Rivera. Here. Marie Harvey.
Here.
Yeah.
Alicia Herrera.
Here.
Linda Hung. Here. Jason Morgan.
Here.
Joshua Northam.
Here.
Benjamin Odell.
Here.
Andy Reffer.
Here.
Kathleen Raleigh. Here. Rebecca Sackett.
Here.
Tina Sloan.
Here.
Tina Sullivan. Here. Matt Wallace. Beverly Young. Here. Have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We understand that some people may need to leave early today, and we're trying to establish quorum and at what time we lose it so that we can frame our day. So if you do need to leave early, can you please disclose what time you need to leave so that we can establish quorum?
11:30. Anybody else at 12:30?
I will need to leave between 12 and 1.
Is that Alicia?
I will need to leave between 12 and 1.
1 o'clock.
Anyone else leaving early? Six, 7, 8. So there's 3 that are absent. That's 8.
If I'd known I could get out of here early.
We have.
Good Lord.
2. We'll be fine.
What do we need for? Yeah. 13, I think. We'll just have one extra. Okay.
Okay, great. All right. Perfect. So with that in mind, we'll jump into today's agenda as originally planned. All right, so I will turn it over to you.
Lose quorum at a certain time? They'll be fine.
We'll be okay. We're going to be good.
All right, so on that note, item 1B is day 2 general session. This is an information action item. Would any commission liaisons or staff like to address the group?
Yeah, I would just like to I'd like to welcome you all to the final day of the RDI TPA work group. It's kind of stunning how far we've come and sort of the amount of information we've plowed through and absorbed and translated into initial recommendations that have been sort of rolled over in the rock tumbler until they're shinier and smoother, and also just watching you all together kind of come together as a group and coalesce. I wish we could just swap in a new topic and keep you. So thank you again and welcome. And that's all for me.
Would you like to add anything this morning?
Perhaps towards the end of the day.
Wonderful.
Juliet?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Final day. I just wanted to remind everybody, just kind of ground us one more time for our final day of work together. First in the charge of the group. Just a reminder, our charge is to evaluate the design and implementation of the teaching performance assessment. And our objective is to ensure that the assessments going forward, are valid, authentic, formative in nature, embedded in preparation, and contribute to program improvement through the accreditation. Also just, I showed this slide yesterday. Our final meeting, we're preparing the final recommendations, but I also want to expand on what happens after the final recommendations are adopted. So at that point, based on which recommendations are adopted by the commission, we will put in the work to revise the program and/or common standards as required. We will also revise the performance assessment design standards if required by the adopted recommendations. And then at that point, that will start the transition to a next generation of performance assessments. That's what the goal was. This group was supposed to kind of start that process. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. So just kind of nuts and bolts about how that's looking from an operational standpoint. One of the things that is absolutely important is continuity. So this is what I shared with the commission at the recent meeting. And so what we'll be doing is based on the interim actions and the updates, the learnings from the literacy performance assessment pilot and the math performance assessment pilot, all of that work, all of the wrapped into the sort of what we're calling continuity contracts with evaluation systems to continue the current performance assessments for a couple of years, option to extend. And then at the same time, we're going to solicit ideas from the larger universe about how to translate the specifications coming out of this group into the next generation performance assessment. So at the same time, we're sending work for a short period of time. We'll be starting the development of the new work alongside it. That will align with the work that is being done here today and what is ultimately taken up by the commission.
Questions about that process?
Clarification, does that mean in the interim, there'll be like a couple of years while things are being worked on, but changes won't necessarily be immediate, right? Like if I'm doing it properly, it'll take a couple of years for the changes to be implemented.
Yeah, so it's changes that came as a result of the interim actions.
Yes.
And as a result, so the condition codes, or a lot of those things that have been elevated and highlighted by this group are already being implemented. And those will be carried through the sort of interim. But in looking at the specifications and then also thinking about, how much technology has developed, considering what possibilities are out there and improving the ability to embed this and reducing the strain and load of scoring. I mean, there's just so much that it's time to open up and see what the possibilities are. So that will take some time, which is actually, I would say, probably lightning speed for,
For state government.
That's not her.
If there are recommendations that are adopted that can be put into place sooner, by all means, we're going to make that happen.
And so, I think one of the things is if we're looking at, we were talking about, is it feasible to think that there might be a 1 week turnaround for a technical condition code. I mean, within the current system, that might require a lot of human labor and strain, and that might be costly and all of those things, but we just don't know. And so if we put that out there as a specification for what we would like people to submit proposals to build. So, don't necessarily constrain yourselves by what's in the current system, because there's a chance to, a lot has happened since this generation of performance assessments in the development of technology. And we'll see.
Can I ask a clarifying question about interim actions? So there are several recommendations that I noticed were crossed off because they were considered to be taken care of in interim actions. Does it help in this process for us to keep those in? So that, okay, because I'm noticing, for example, the interim action about technical coach, just going back to what you were saying, A2 has been addressed, but that interim action included all technical codes. There's still several more that we haven't attended to. I know we were addressing that one first because it was the most, but it's not including all of them yet, right?
Well, actually, there has been a big revision, and so a lot of
Okay,
them
great.
have been, but there's still work to be done.
Okay.
I would not worry about duplicating
Yeah,
what's in the interim
absolutely.
action. Interim actions has given us the mechanism to take ideas that you've surfaced and that the commission has weighed in on and get to work immediately. But we please do retain those in the broader recommendations, because that informs how we're going out and getting the next generation of performance assessments rolling. Don't worry about, I would not want to worry about application of interim actions.
I just say, something remarkable when we talk about the lightning speed and government and, things that happen. And or things that, initiatives that are begun and then you're out and a new initiative and then the chaos that reigns sometimes in our policy environment. In 2 years, it will be 30 years since we passed Senate Bill 2042, who said we should do this. All right, I know. It makes me feel a little older too. But that an idea like this has been evolving, and it has evolved every year. For the first many years, like decade of initial development, it was very innovative space in teacher education, from the PACT consortium of universities saying, we want to take this on and see how we would do this. And a brilliant model emerged. The state was able to build a model that was available for any other institution that didn't have whatever it was, the will or the wherewithal to build. Those are the initial models, and it's evolved every single year since then. And that we're approaching its 30-year birthday. And thinking about what next generation in this time and place means is a remarkable thing for a policy in education, I think. So just, waxing historic for a minute.
All right, so we're going to move on to 2B, which is kind of continuing the work that we were engaged in yesterday. Hopefully you had a little time to sleep on it. Maybe you even opened it up and wrote a few more comments. I noticed that there were more comments there this morning as I was engaging. So if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, there is a wealth of new thoughts added to the slides. So I encourage everyone to take a moment to look at that. But we're going to continue that work. And so, Juliet, will you share with us how we're going to do that next engagement?
Absolutely. We're going to repeat the process that we engaged in yesterday. So again, we'd like you to mix yourselves up again. Work yourself in a new space, work with some new people, review those recommendations, and you're working to consolidate and revise. We're planning to give you about an hour for this process this morning. I did want to give, just kind of based on reviewing the slides and seeing what's there, I wanted to remind everybody of the interim actions. Because it seemed like, based on some of the comments on the slides, that groups were thinking that things were covered by the interim actions that I don't know actually were. So the interim actions were to eliminate content-based condition codes, redirect responses with technical condition codes back to candidates, update the guidelines for acceptable support, standardize the commission system for reporting TPA data, ensure a secondary passing standard notification system for candidates and programs, issue a notification to all programs identifying their TPA pass rates and provide guidance for improving support for candidates, and then direct staff to report on interim action implementation progress. And you do have a copy of these interim actions in the agenda item 3C from the last commission meeting. It's in your binders if you want to revisit those. Okay. And then again, our ultimate goal is to develop final recommendations that are focused, streamlined, and directly actionable. So you're looking, do 2 or more recommendations have the same intent? Could recommendations be merged without losing clarity? Is one recommendation a more detailed version of another? And again, as you're working, really keep in mind, what is that next generation TPA? What does that look like? How do these recommendations help us to get there? So with that, we will go ahead and open up the breakout rooms. I did rearrange the slides more time just to put the colors back together.
Just one very quick note, when I was re-reviewing them last night, sometimes some of our recommendations are bundled within another recommendation. So like as an example, looking at disproportionate pass rates is bundled within local scoring. And then there are other recommendations about local scoring elsewhere. And part of me is wondering if simplifying things, get at the heart of what the recommendation is, might be more valuable so it doesn't get shot down because there's like a bundle within a bundle within a bundle, if that makes sense. So I was just gonna have a recommendation to simplify things. And if local scoring exists elsewhere, cool. Or like separate ideas potentially even. And I'm not trying to say add more recommendations, but.
I think you're right.
Question also, your comment made me think of it. Maybe I just missed it in looking through all these, but didn't we have at least one recommendation that had something to do with accreditation? And where is it?
Added that in item 5. So Vanessa added it to, wasn't it program standard 5 where we added that language?
No, we took that part out, didn't we? We didn't say specific standards.
So when you look at the slides and you look at the green slides, we color coded them. So where we embedded it was on a white slide. So when you read that slide, you'll see it's at the very tail end of that.
Of the way this.
So it's in,
3-7, I think.
it's in the group that the green group.
It's in that one. And what we
Thank you.
what we said was something to the effect of that the commission established like a floor or
Slide 29.
what does it say? Can you read it, Vanessa?
The CTC should include a minimum passage rate for the TPA to be applied through the accreditation process.
Want it to feel stronger that there should be consequences related to accreditation.
That's what we said with the accreditation process, so that, you know, as institutions go through the accreditation process, because there's going to be a variety of reasons why their passage
Right.
rates might be bad or whatever. And so then through the process of accreditation, if they don't meet that level, then they can determine, reviewers can determine what steps, like maybe it's a quarterly report that shows how you are investigating why this is, or if you know why it is based on, you know, what was found during the accreditation process, recommend some other actions during the accreditation process.
Yeah. I just think Gary can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I just think that if it's going to impact accreditation status in any way, there has to be specific language about that because an institution could appeal. You're holding me to something that's not written anywhere that this is a criteria for accreditation. And so somewhere it's got to be in,
But the accreditation uses the program standards and
and I'm just saying somewhere it's got to be.
so it needs to get explicitly stated in the standards.
Standard.
Right.
So
Josh, did you?
related to that, can I just jump on that? Where are the data issues? Because there are explicit requirements in 1263 that the commission track how candidates are performing across all institutions and report on that. Is that going to be under CTC supports for programs, or is that going to be under program practices and updates? Because that also seems like it's in the universe of accreditation. What's happening at the university level. Excuse me for interrupting.
I had a question there. This happened yesterday too, where like Linda came into our room and said, hey, I think these belong to you. And then I just heard Ben was like saying like, oh, I think this should be here. Are we gonna, is there a time for us as a whole group to review today? Because I think that would help with some
That's
of the.
gonna happen after this session, after this breakout. Sorry, just a note on the process for today. After this time in the breakout rooms, then we're gonna come back as a whole group and look at the whole set. Decide, okay, these are our final recommendations. Then go back into small groups to develop the rationale and theory of action for that final set. Review those one more time. Then we will get through all of that by 3 o'clock. After today, we will do one last email poll, but at that point, you will be rating the level of priority, providing a level of priority. So high to low, and then we'll be able to provide those scores to the commission.
All right. Any other comments before we move to our rooms?
All right. Just one more note, just because I just saw the email from Tina. And you're looking online. It's linked in, the interim actions are linked under the agenda yesterday. Have the number. Handout. Handout 3A1.
Copying into the slide deck.
Sure, that's a good idea. Yeah, I'll put it in the slides.
Like
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so let's,
Juliet. I'm putting the link.
all right, so let's give Juliet about 5 minutes. You can start making your way to the breakout room and then we'll get started at 9:05. Do great work.
No, she said.
Never mind, I can't do it.
It was a good discussion, but we didn't get it.
We can assemble ourselves in the rear over so that they can see the screen. We can put our online attendance on. Just take a moment to join us as we assemble over in that area. A group photo.
On screen.
Yep.
Yes, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Girls on your.
People left.
The hair down.
Come on in.
Becca, come back on. Taking a.
Oh.
I love it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Release them. Okay, where's the shortest person? Or are you standing in front of that?
Oh, are we taking a picture?
Yes, that's why I turn off.
You're fine. You look good.
Visual.
Thanks.
Photos. So we're gonna family photo this. Okay.
We're taking a photo. And then wore a blazer.
Cheers.
It's that.
Okay. Right here, Matt. We're gonna cover my tummy, so we're good. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll be there. You're almost ready. Five.
Right, but then we want to see the, yeah. You got a job. That's so helpful, but I just. Who's making us?
That's awesome. Cheers.
I'll make it y'all.
We're trying to get, there, now Vanessa has a chair. Oh. And you up a little. Behind you right here. Yeah. Right? It's okay.
What else is?
We need you.
Priority.
I think her camera.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Hi, Cheryl.
They're taking pictures, Cheryl. Okay.
Smile everyone on.
Yes.
I know, it's okay.
Please, please.
Rhonda, hide you.
Rhonda, hide you. Please, you're holding us up. You're holding us up.
I know.
Oh, you are coming in. Right. Taking pictures,
Are we smiling now?
The cover of your next. Just kidding. Have the final. Actually, I did a new slide. Oh, no, I forgot I had this thing.
Okay, great.
Should we let people just?
Right, you look stylish.
100%. They have zero idea what was happening in the room.
Share that.
Yeah.
Good job, team.
11 of 5.
Ambitious to move on.
No, thanks. Yeah. Should I show you what Aaron was?
Thank you.
Okay.
I wasn't gonna do that, you mum.
Okay, I mean, and never has any job. That's not me. Oh, Devin, you're that.
When I think that there's no one who loves me, I'm gonna go to the house.
Oh. Small children. They'll love it. Give a picture of you.
Glasses so we can.
I should have done it. Like little like 99-cent store, you know, freedom lookalikes.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for the work that you were doing. In the last kind of breakout room moment, what I noticed and what we were looking at is that some pretty substantive, significant changes that just occurred after you slept on it. And for the good of everyone in the room, I think it would be important to take just a little bit of time to look at what the other groups did. And spend some time doing that.
I have a new slideshow for you.
Perfect.
I went through, deleted the ones that were deleted. These don't have comments, but if you want to see what the comments were, you can look back at the other slideshow. But you just have to give me a minute so that I can email it to you.
So in an effort to be expedient in the process, we're going to get those into our email in about 1 minute. Let's spend until 10:50-ish just reading them. And if we need more time, we'll do that. We just want to make sure everyone's aware of where the recommendations are at this moment and not just the group that you are in. And while she's emailing that, what will happen next is we'll start working in a group conversation. So when you're reading them, make notes about what you might feel compelled to say. Because then we're going to have a group long discussion so that we can make sure that these encapsulate our final recommendations. This becomes kind of the moment, right? Okay. You're doing great. No one's looking at you. All right, so it's 10:43. Let's take until 10:50 and then we'll do a check-in if you need more time. We'll extend it at that point. Uh-oh. Telling us we have to request access.
Of course it
Refresh.
Thank you. I'm doing a check-in. How are we doing? Ready to go? Okay. I'm gonna talk slowly while
I like slowly, yes, that's a great idea.
All right, so what we'd like to do is open it up for kind of your noticings, illuminate any of the contradictions you might see or overlap where you think we can consolidate. Does the ask make sense? What we'd like to do is open it to everyone, and I just want us to be mindful of our group norms in this process, making sure that everyone has a voice at the table, and giving everyone space to be part of the conversation. Right?
So the floor is now open.
Almost. Good. Fantastic.
But I'm just gonna say that I'm gonna keep it in this mode so that I can highlight any points in the speaker notes. Right? So, okay.
So starting at the beginning, which is on the earliest part of the presentation, is there a contradiction that you noticed? Looking at slides 4 and 5, the orange slides.
Too.
Yeah.
I think that's where.
Well, but I do notice a contradiction there
Slides 4 and 5.
in slide 5 specifically, if nobody else brings it up.
But you're asking for 4 and 5 right now, right?
Yeah, right now I'm asking specifically about 5. So I don't know if I'm misinterpreting what I'm reading, but I noticed that on slide 5 in the yellow, it says this slide is a combination of slides. It's a substantive change in that it replaces local scoring with local analysis of candidate work. So that's a shift in my mind, but I don't know if I'm reading that correctly.
Oh, I think the comment that they added at the bottom says it doesn't replace local scoring, and I think we have another recommendation about local scoring. So I think this is in addition to local scoring, it's adding local analysis.
Okay, thank you
That's
for
how I
that
read it.
clarification. Thank you for that. So in addition to local scoring, local analysis.
This is the one I was calling out at the beginning, that local scoring was there, but then as disaggregation of data based off of like subgroup. And one does not have to live with the other. So like theoretically, both can go forward or one can go, right? Like, so that's, I think they shifted it to make it so it's not contingent on local scoring, but it can exist regardless.
Yes.
I think Linda was before me.
Oh, Linda, did you have something?
No, now I'm thinking, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Dana.
Well, I noticed that, I read that too. And I don't see local scoring anywhere else.
Anywhere.
I actually
Well,
went
then I'm
away.
looking for it. Yeah.
In the consolidation process, it's gone, which I'm not sure if that's what we intended. I do appreciate though the inclusion of the analysis, because I do think that was one of the hopes, was that through local scoring, there would be a depth of analysis of the scores and that kind of thing. So I appreciate that being added, and I think we lost the whether or not we want to actually require anything around it.
In the group that did this, that's exactly what it was about. The requirement for local score, we thought was not a feasible thing at the moment, no matter how much we might like it. But the use of local scoring for program improvement, for improvement of support of candidates, particularly candidates that are mentioned in the paragraph, that we think is a requirement in a sense that that when it comes to accreditation, institutions need to be able to be really clear about how often and when and how are they ensuring that people are involved in analysing scores and understanding scoring and all of the other things that we would do as professional development on a yearly or bi-yearly basis in our institutions. That was the idea, I think. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it was replacing local scoring with local analysis. Is that accurate?
As a requirement, yes. It doesn't replace the, I mean, it's already in the statute, local scoring and possibility if you want to do it. That's already there. We didn't need to restate it.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
And a quick clarifying question. This recommendation specific to program standard 5, And I'm wondering if there are probably a number of recommendations here that will impact standards. I wonder if you would maybe consider recommending that program standards include a requirement. Flexibility
It
to.
doesn't have to be five. I
Have to
don't
be
think anyone
particularly
cares
fine.
where it goes.
Change that.
Thank you. Small technical thing.
No, but that's great. It's great.
Kate?
Looking at 5. If you're comfortable with this, because now we're gonna have to all like keep 5 in our head and scroll to 19. Are these too similar? Because it even addresses program standard 5, comprehensive data analysis, and that it includes stakeholders. Is this an echo, or is there something significant here?
Would it be okay if Juliet moves 19 up and so we can toggle?
Would that be?
Is that too big of an ask?
It's not.
Can we eliminate the yellow box now that we all understand the note?
Put them side by side.
I know, I don't know how to do that.
Will it make it too small? Say yes, because you knew I was gonna try.
Yeah, it does seem like the essence of those ideas is.
Could we also include the old slide, the former slide on local scoring that was slide 5 in the slide deck we were working with yesterday? Or
Can we see it if we go into the draft recommendation slide? I
See it?
think we would each individually have to have both open. That makes sense, Tina?
Yeah. I just like the introductory part to that.
So,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we were really trying to make sure we put in there was that it was tied to accreditation. So
develop that separately in 3 slides.
I just want to, I feel like the essence is in slide 5 but slide 5 doesn't have the accreditation part. I also just want to point out that I appreciate slide 5 very much. I was on the fence of moving completely to local scoring. That was one thing that I was hesitant about. So I appreciate the options for each school site to be able to develop their own and use that information for analysis. And I think that's what slide 6 is really trying to make sure that IHEs are using that for analysis and accreditation.
Slide 6 now, the one that's been
Slide 6
done.
now, yes.
Yeah.
That's what I want to
add.
Yeah, I guess I was getting myself confused, and I just probably need clarification, but I don't have your updated. It was on my slide, it's 8, where it's the slide that said replace local scoring with local analysis of candidate work with the yellow box.
5.
Oh, that's 5?
Yeah.
That's okay. I have an old version. Never mind. Just refresh. I did. I'll go back to my email. Thank you.
So what are we thinking? Can these be merged, or are the ideas already captured? And if so, do we prefer the way it's captured in slide 5 over slide 6, or vice versa? Vanessa?
That there's one statement in slide 6 that says as a central component of continuous improvement and accreditation, maybe just do that over. And then I think everything else kind of falls in line with what slide 5. So, anybody else agree?
Yeah. I think our group would agree with that.
So we're gonna call for consensus. So I'm still unclear. Are we saying we like the language in slide 5, So we're okay with doing away with slide 6? Is that what I'm hearing?
With pulling this one statement and.
And adding it to slide 5.
Adding it into.
Because I've been told yes to.
Okay, got it.
I have a question.
Good.
In slide 5, under those bullet points, are we okay with that sort of non-specific that they analyze a percentage? Because a percentage could be one. So it could be, there are programs that look for kind of loophole things and that, so, 10, but not some minimum percentage of their candidates needs to be some specification, a sufficient amount.
So should we give a percentage? Is that what you're
A
suggesting?
minimum of, or I don't know what it would be.
Can I ask?
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Muted.
I thought Margaret was going first, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tina.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just wondering if we should make this change before we make a decision about whether we're having the local scoring element back in here again, because this slide and the local scoring slide then are very similar, and maybe slide 6 offers a slightly broader.
So if I understood correctly, the gentleman shared with us that the thought was to replace local scoring with local analysis.
Right, but did we make that decision as a group that that's what we want to do?
We have not yet. We can do that first if you'd like.
I think before we combine slides 5 and 6, we might make that decision.
Okay, so
Just-
so let's do that first. So,
But can I reiterate what I said then?
yes.
There's not, we can't take away the possibility of doing it. That's in the statute already. Anybody can do local scoring. We're not taking that away. What we're taking away is the requirement to do local scoring and replacing that with the requirement to do analysis and use of the data of
Excellent.
scores. I think that's, yeah, okay.
Becca?
I was just looking at slide 6. I know one thing that was different about that was specifically calling out the teachers, like the site mentors. I don't remember what word we used. Oh, yeah. And I didn't see that in the other one. I know that was part of the intent, was broadening who engages. So that was just a note. Not to Colin's point, that was just a note on if we're combining.
So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna make a decision collectively. And then from there, then we're gonna dismiss. So Mandy's gonna keep track of what you just shared. We'll come back to that after we make a decision on analysis versus. If I understood correctly, saying the statute already allows for institutions make a decision. Because of that, they're saying, let's require local analysis, not local scoring. Mandy?
Not just me, by the way.
Yeah.
Say me.
I am so sorry.
I feel like I need to leave the room while you're done.
Okay, I'm going to play out devil's advocate just because I don't like analysis because I feel like the opposite of you and your team, Colin, of analysis, because I feel like that's what everyone is doing right now is they're analyzing because each institute is trying to figure out how to get their candidates to pass. So again, I feel like analysis just allows people to analyze and they can analyze, and what does analyze really mean? Whereas I felt like as a group, we were pro local scoring because of all the things we've talked about with local scoring and as it stands, it says that they can locally score, but that's like the fast. You can make your own TPA, you can locally score. But right now, at TPA and TPA is not locally scored, it's scored by Pearson. And so I think I was, or if not, I'm very pro, the team who originally wrote this and said that these percentages are locally scored. And the reason why we put those percentages in there was to recommend to the CTC to make it feasible that, yeah, there are institutes that have 1,000 candidates. That is not feasible for them to score 100% of their candidates. However, if we give them a minimal percentage of every institute, 10%, 10% of 1,000, if you can credential 1,000 candidates, you can score 10%. If you have 20 candidates, you can score 10%. So that's why those bullet points are there already to make it possible, feasible. So I am very much against we'll analyze. I want we'll locally score. So that's where I stand on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mandy?
We've got Bev and then Kathy. Go ahead, Bev.
I would just sort of be contrary, sorry, Linda.
Mhm.
Because I think the language about the analysis of work is very specific about, you're not just analyzing it, but it specifies that you look at the student work to better understand and support candidates, to understand disproportionate pass rates, use the findings to refine curriculum to better support. I think that the specifics here about the purpose of the analysis and how you use it would result in much bigger impact on program improvement and candidate support than local scoring. And when we say, Pearson does it, well, for the most part, Pearson uses local scorers. It's not going to some corporate headquarters. They're contracting with people to score it. So to me, the language that you guys put together about analysis to me is much stronger and will have a bigger impact.
Thank you. Kathy.
Basically ditto what she said, because also, when we're talking about, this is very specific. And when I think about the local scoring idea, what is the goal of local scoring? And I think it is this. And I think this is specific enough. And I do think tied with the language from some of the other recommendations about it being part of the accreditation, I think it's strong enough. And so I would say this is a good improvement, I think, because again, local scoring option already exists. It's the analysis that is missing and the teeth to how you would analyze it and how you use it. That's what was missing. So I think this is specific enough.
So we've got some people who are going to be leaving soon. And we had a conversation yesterday about the need to have somebody locked in the role to be able to keep us on track. And so I'm going to shift to that role right now. If I'm asking for your permission to make that shift right now. So if you give me permission to make that shift right now, give me a thumbs up. If you can live with me taking on that this, or if you don't think I should do it, then a thumbs down. So thumbs up, middle, or down for
Understand
everybody.
what we're voting on.
We're if I can shift to keep the conversation moving along, which means we're not going to beat a dead horse. We've got 24 other recommendations to review and people will be leaving. So if you give me permission, a thumbs up. If you don't, you can live with it, or if you can't.
Tina has her.
Okay.
No.
When you have the thumbs down.
Because my name's on the list and I haven't been able to speak.
Okay. So I just want to acknowledge that everyone here is going to feel similarly when I have to cut them off. And so I feel like we've got enough of a sense of this right now, but if you have an idea that hasn't been shared yet about this that you'd like to contribute, please do.
First, let go.
Okay, I just wanted to contribute that when we initially brought up the idea of locally scoring, it was two-pronged. It was to support program improvement, which I think slide 5 does a beautiful job of doing. And I think encapsulates a lot of the ideas that we were circling around, but didn't quite land on. I disagree that it actually attends to improving the candidate experience in the individual moment for helping to provide culturally responsive feedback by a person who knows the candidate And if it's not locally scored, then that context is unknown to the scorer, and that this moment, this slide does not address that. So by not doing locally scoring, we are not improving the candidate experience, which is why we were here in the first place, because we know there's over 80% of candidates have a bad experience with the TPA. And I thought local scoring could actually improve the candidate experience. I do agree that slide 5 addresses program.
Excellent. Thank you, Mandy. Adam?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna push in a staff here just to do my thing and remind us about statute. So the charge of the work group was not to provide recommendations on local analysis. I'll read it explicit. The recommendations, this is from 44320.4. Recommendations for how programs can engage in local scoring of the assessment to inform program improvement. So that is the specific statute that we have to remain tightly aligned to.
Can you repeat that?
Recommendations for how programs can engage in local scoring of the assessments to inform program improvement. And understanding that recommendations are at a certain grain size, right? This is not to specify down to the millimeter of how this can go. But just wanted to remind us that is the charge of this work group from the commission as well as from the legislature in terms of what we are providing recommendations about.
Then in that case, it's a moot point.
Right.
What's a moot point?
Yeah, I don't understand.
So what
I don't understand, Adam.
So what I'm saying is specifically in
No,
staff.
no, I get it, Adam. Can I respond then? Because I think, can you read that statement again? It says, how will they engage in local scoring? I believe that they are engaging in local scoring by investigating, analyzing, and reporting back on the things that they're doing, as against doing the actual local scoring. That was the bit that, as a group, we felt there was no point. A couple of people there had already asked their faculty, where were they on local scoring? And they said, we are not doing local scoring. We are not going to be the scorer of our students. We can't do that. We don't want to do it. And so we were trying to be realistic about what we can expect. But what we can do is expect them to engage with the scores that have happened by doing scoring and understanding the scoring, but not for the candidates as far as their credential is concerned. I think that's where we were as a group. Yeah.
So how long do we want to give this one? Because we've got 24 others to go.
Sorry.
So
I promise I won't say anything.
it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I understand everybody here is passionate. And we're equally passionate about this one as we are about the other 24. And so we've got to make a decision one way or the other.
A quick recommendation of just wordsmithing it to something like by enhancing local scoring, something, and then putting in the analysis piece. I don't know. I just thought because of that, because what we're charged to do, something about local scoring and then putting in this local analysis piece. So I don't know how everyone feels about wordsmithing it in a way to meet both requirements, because they're both equally important.
Good idea.
Let me take these final online comments and then we're going to start to work on that, what you just suggested.
I will just say that I am uncomfortable because we are in a hurry with making some of these recommendations right now, changing something drastic and taking local scoring out. And in fact, when I was first reading these, I wasn't looking at the final recommendations. I was looking at the draft, and I thought that both these slides were a part of the final recommendations. In other words, the local scoring and the local analysis. And I thought that was great. Now, maybe it isn't, but I'm wondering if one thing that we can do is leave both in there. The commissioners make the final decisions, because one question I do have also about the local analysis is about how different it is from what current practice is and from what current standards say, and whether having this language would actually make a difference in what we are hoping to see if it is just local analysis. Maybe it will. I just don't have the confidence at this minute to say we can do this and not make any recommendations about local scoring.
Exactly what my train of thought was. And like, it was on slide 7. Local scoring was separated in slide 7 previously.
So what I'm hearing is we make both recommendations and let the commission handle that.
They would support both.
Yeah, that part.
Which that's their prerogative. The one just making recommendations.
That's true.
We're gonna be prioritizing them anyway, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna add this back in.
Yep. And then they will both be recommendations.
We're gonna put in something about the minimum percentage.
Yeah, I actually, in the draft recommendations, it was slides 5 and 8. I thought, even though slide 5 duplicates, or 8 duplicates a lot of slide 5, I don't know, but that there is.
Do we allow the commission to establish that percentage?
Yeah, I like the intro to slide 5, which says that it's recommended to gauge in local scoring, aligning with program needs and candidate needs for support. Like that's the purpose.
Can you add a note in there that says that the commission would establish the percentage?
I just want to make sure I'm getting the right slide.
Hold on.
That was it, slide 5?
It's slide 5,
Yeah.
not slide 7.
This one that's we're on right now. I thought this one plus the other one was the recommendations when I was first reading this.
That note, and then
Note that the commission will establish the percentage. The percentage for each of the bullets.
Oh, this line at the bottom. Yes.
oh,
Okay,
so combining any of
Asking
this.
the commission to look at both slides.
that we were gonna make both recommendations.
Whether, so they will decide whether analysing is enough or whether we're gonna require local scoring.
Correct.
Or both.
And
Happy.
or both, and then they would also decide on the percentages for the bullets.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna provide both rationales as to why we think these are important.
Yes. Absolutely will.
I take this language. Add it here.
The both. Yeah.
Show where I'm putting it and something else. This part that as a, what we got discussed about moving this in.
We do at the end of that sentence, right?
There's a big long sense.
I just ask a question while you're thinking. In looking at some options for analyzing candidate level responses might include, and we replace scoring with the word analyze in every case here. That's what's being recommended by the subgroup. Wondering if you want to keep scoring as one of the ways that they, for the first and second bullet, or for the first bullet, score a percentage of. And as an option might include, it's just a question I'm asking because I'm sensing there's a dilemma here. And this does appear as a recommendation to That scoring outside of analysis and analysis as scoring or scoring as analysis may be a stretch unless you explain that pretty clearly.
And
So I wonder if your intent is really to remove scoring from this recommendation.
And so we're at odds right now.
Are we?
We are.
What do you mean, removing scoring?
Well, I think
The
this.
use of scoring, I find it really hard to differentiate between when we sit around doing professional development and we have the people in the room that are working with candidates and they sit and score together and compare and talk and all those great conversations about what is really good teaching that comes out of that, as against scoring our candidates and putting that through Pearson or whoever else and determining their credential. The two things are very different paths. And my own path, and I think it was our groups, was we didn't think that we could ask instructors and faculty to score or require them to score, right? And so that's why we moved it away from the professional development piece and the improvement of the program piece and the improvement of students piece. That analyzing, it would always be through scoring and using scores as against actually scoring for the credential purposes. That's the difference, I think.
So whether their activities are consequential for candidates or not.
Yes,
They're,
basically.
yeah, they are still responsible for recommending a candidate for a credential. But I guess this just, I'm wondering if you need a footnote here to this that just simply says analysis can and may include local scoring, to at least keep that on the table.
And the
know.
commission can decide. We're recommending, that the commission either at the analysis point, look at the local scoring, or potentially consider. So that's for the commission.
I think so. Because there's financial implications in one and not in the other, really.
There's also the change element.
Significant.
There's the change element as well, because currently no institution is involved in local scoring. Even at Fresno State, the full-time faculty.
They have the option, some of them
the
are.
option.
We have Rebecca and Kate.
So we're gonna take these comments, but just to reiterate, these three are recommendations.
Oh, I delete this one now?
Since it's part of the other, you're okay with her deleting that now? Thumbs up. It's embedded in the other. Here.
So what are we deleting? Please.
Green slide, the green slide.
I think somebody else brought up the fact that we were making sure to highlight that more than just the scorers can participate, but that in there. Wonderful. Then yes.
I
Happy
just
in
to the
both of these?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that it's just important to consider that a school could hire a person to be the scorer, and then that person just does the scoring and doesn't infuse the whole program. And that's where I think the leaning into the analysis is super important and specifying that it has to be inclusive of everyone who works with candidates. And I think that's where we're going to get what we want to happen out of it. So just because a school may say they score locally, all of that knowledge may sit with one person that they hire just to do that. So keep that in mind.
Rebecca. And Kate, my apologies. You have been waiting so patiently, my dear. Kate.
I wanted to, as we move forward, moving forward is important. Thinking about the charge of local scoring, maybe looking at the embedded noises. All right, bringing the slides through that lens. If it's embedded and professors are giving authentic feedback and scoring the embedded work that will be allowed to use for accreditation now because we made a rule, that might be give and take because you are scoring more students work in the classroom and giving them authentic feedback, that might be the very. Linda.
Oh, Linda. So much for my client. I'm sorry. Hey, and for the record, consensus wise, unless there's the word local scoring, I'm not in.
So just really thinking about those embedded slides that are coming up. And maybe framing that as a place, and I'm wondering what the wiggle room is there. And so that was more like a question suggestion, and I'm ready to move forward if you guys need to.
Highlight one thing, you know, this is, I think, a good outcome because the commission is ultimately who you're making the recommendations for. I think it's totally legitimate to say, we were divided on this and point straight to the tension and then hand it over to them to make the decision.
Exactly.
That is fantastic.
Can I ask one question?
No, just kidding.
We added this language to this piece about the analysis, but we didn't add it to slide that talks specifically about local scoring.
Agreed.
Would it be put
Yes.
in
Yeah,
both places?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Sure, I copied. And then are we deleting this one?
Yes. Because it's already embedded in the other.
Do I say this? I'm reading this.
Everybody. Right. Yay! All right, moving on to the next. So we are on slide 7. So are there any other contradictions that we find that we need to address? Are we good with that recommendation as it is? So if you're good with that recommendation as it is, a thumbs up, you can live with it. If there's a thumbs down, we always stop. And I see a couple people who I don't see a finger from yet, so I'm gonna call on. All right,
Then we've got a lot to do.
as well as our online.
Okay. There's an asterisk in between exceptional needs, and I'm just wondering if there's a reason or.
And Adam, can you help me monitor the people online? Because they're on my backside.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So that recommendation is.
You didn't
Right.
address this question.
No, it was the asterisk in between exceptional and needs, and if that was a reason or.
There was a rationale piece that was deleted. The asterisk went to the rationale, explain what that meant.
Should we delete the asterisk?
Yeah, it was because not everyone understood what exceptional needs,
Oh.
so it needed to be clarified.
Rationales in the speaker slide 11 on the.
Old version?
Yeah, I believe so. It just says rational idea, maybe not. No, I take it.
Mandy, I'm gonna pass the role to you because I gotta step out and make a call, but I'll be back.
Considering your audience, I think they'll be understanding of what exceptional needs is.
Okay, so let's move on, please, to slide 9. Right, so this was looking at the exam structure.
Not the slide I.
That's
like
not the
9.
slide I have for
Because
nine
we
either.
dropped one up.
Slide 8.
Well, yeah, it's just.
So it's not, I apologize, mine's not uploading and updating. I apologize, slide 8. The second purple one.
Is somebody else gonna edit like for
Like
capital
grammar.
S bothers
Yeah,
me
yeah.
and stuff like that?
Slide on substance.
We'll do that stuff.
Need to do copy editing at this
Okay.
table.
As long as we know it's not-
All right, so
Question on that
Yes.
one? I don't understand the last word. Not sure what that means. I mean, I really don't. I'm not just saying that because I want to talk about it. I don't understand.
I love it.
I really don't understand.
We had just talked about secondary pass rate and like basically keeping it going.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that that secondary pass rate was still in here somewhere.
Oh, I thought that it was implying that there should be some change in something else.
It's just keeping it from going away.
Okay, good. All right. Absolutely.
thanks. See, oh. Tina.
I had two comments and a question, or comment and question. I wondered about slide 8 and 9, if they incorporate the same things. And I also wondered if 8 was being overly prescriptive, particularly with things like redesigning the rubrics and et cetera. Would 9 work well enough for what the intent is on 8?
In our group, we were looking through the actual rubrics that they were using and how many times each part of the TPA was scored in different things, and that's why we listed it out with redesigning rubrics and streamlining.
So I understand that. I also know that in ensuring that an assessment is a valid assessment for a construct or a practice, that there's oftentimes the requirement is there's multiple places in an assessment where something is assessed in a slightly different way to ensure that if a candidate is demonstrating that they're inclusive of all students, that there are multiple places in which that happens. So a rubric can look duplicative, but in fact, it's a requirement to ensure that the construct is adequately assessed. And so I don't know if we have the expertise to make a recommended change like that. When these have gone through a very strong vetting process with all kinds of people and teacher educators and experts, et cetera. I'm just not sure how we would say that.
We were also keeping in mind with the words we heard earlier with next generation TPAs that we wanted to make sure these were a part of that, because if it's next generation TPAs, I wouldn't imagine that the TPAs from old TPAs would move over with that. That was part of it.
Thinking about the rubrics moving over.
Correct me if I'm wrong, group. It's just not. It's not just me that was saying that. We had a group discussion.
Wonder if you put in the word unnecessarily, eliminating unnecessarily duplicative activities, if that would capture Tina's concern and maybe.
Well, I also just didn't know if by saying streamlining and redesigning rubrics means that the current TPAs in use can't be used anymore, that the rubrics they all need to be streamlined and redesigned.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of call out what I see as the difference between 8 and 9, slide 8 and 9. I kind of see slide 8 being about the essence of it being about the analysis of universal design for learning on the structure of the TPA. So the test itself. So like you were saying, does these rubrics does this test right now, is that accessible through UDL principles? And then slide 9 looks like it's about the teacher's demonstration of practice. So how are they, in essence, using the UDL practices to show their evidence in that. So I think, not combining these two would be my favor, because I see them as two different things but related with UDL, but just in different spaces, which are equally important in my mind.
Lori, then Ben.
Yeah, I also am a little bit worried about the prescriptive nature of this and wonder if we could maybe get around that by saying the way it reads on slide 8 is that it has to be adjusted to include. It says shall be adjusted to include, but not limited to. And I wonder about the 5th bullet point, requiring TPA segments to be assigned evaluated and submit. Like what? I don't know what that means. Does that mean instructors are evaluating those tasks? So it seems a bit restrictive to me.
Bev?
I agree with what Alicia said about these two addressing two separate things. One's the assessment and one's the candidate's performance. But I do think it's confusing because if you look at the stems for each one, the dark bullet, they sound like they're asking for the same thing. And I think you could combine them without losing both elements, but just saying, we're going to, examine, redesign, whatever, aligned with UDL to look at both the assessment itself and candidate competence, and then take those bullets as options. They, these things should be considered, because like the one that says it shall be adjusted, what if it doesn't need change? So it's like these things should be considered, and figure out of those 2 slides, very long list of bullets, which ones are the most important generic ones that can apply to both parts. So you take what to me looks like 2 very long slides about UDL and put it into one about the whole experience aligning with UDL, the test itself, and then demonstrations of competence.
Rebecca?
To what Bev was saying, I think there's an opportunity maybe to restate this and be simple and just say center universal design principles. There was another place where we said do a universal design audit, but if we reworked it and we could take away the bullets, trusting that the people who are going to work on the redesign, like we're making suggestions, there are other people who are going to implement, that the people who are implementing are directed to center universal design and go through it. And I think what Bev is saying is I think it would work to say center universal design both in the assessment design and the student's competence, demonstration of competence. So this makes my previous comment kind of, if we go that way, it's moot. But when I think Tina was asking about the rubrics, and this reminded me of another thing coming up where we call out that the rubrics will be asset-based or asset-oriented. So I don't know if we want to use that language here, just calling it out.
Vanessa?
I agree with what you just said about the potential of combining the two. And then the prescriptive nature of some of the bullet points. I just wanted to point out the last one again, to Colin's point, saying establishing a secondary passing rate, maybe just continuing use of changing the word establishing and making sure that statement stays if we do consolidate 7 and 8, but making sure that last statement stays continued use and not established, because that's already been established.
Jason?
I agree. I was thinking about saying maintaining. Is it possible to just include this as a list of options rather than saying it shall be adjusted? I don't want to assume whoever the UDL team is going to be, that they're going to that they'll hit these elements. Even just something as simple as the one that we talked about, the live link to the rubric or the improved instruction. So as a teacher, I'm anticipating where my students are gonna be confused, so I have the instruction, and then they're like sub-directions, so I know they go in the right way, because I'm not assessing how well they understood the instruction. I just want to see, can you do this thing? And anticipate I may not be communicating very clearly, but I don't know if the UDL team would, get something simple like that. It's possible that they would miss it. So if we had some of those options, I remember when we first started, it was just one slide. Then after these rounds,
But I also think that some things got combined, which was the UDL became the overarching piece, but then a whole bunch of other slides about how the exam would change got put under that umbrella. So if we're really wanting a UDL piece, but that's separate from these others, I'm actually thinking maybe we need a third slide that's just about the UDL piece, and then the exam structure, and then the candidate response. Or we leave it as the umbrella on the two components. That makes sense?
Up, Kathy.
Like the side.
I just feel like I guess I would want to understand we could put all of it on one slide under the UDL umbrella. I think that could happen. The prescriptive nature of some of the, once I understand about, some people might be missing some of that. But I feel as if you understand UDL, and if some of those structural things are going to come up. Or they should. Right? But I know, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. So I don't know if we're, so I guess I would just, in the essence of, this might be one of those cases where if we leave them, leave the prescriptive nature of it, or maybe we just put like a little asterisk and say, see these little bullet points, because I do think you can say, combine UDL, saying that you want the candidate experience and the competencies and the rubrics and whatever, all to be designed around UDL principles. I think you can say that in one slide. I think you can make that in one recommendation. And then again, like if you want to say, for an example of UDL of these principles, and then attach it somewhere else. I'm, as an idea.
Nessa?
Sorry, I had an idea as we were talking and then it kind of went it kind of went away, but this first sentence, the TPA exam structure shall be adjusted. Maybe we can just adjust that and say the structure can be adjusted to include, but not limited to. The nature of it, with understanding that all of those things should come from the UDL lens.
I just want to say that we changed that word specifically so people couldn't just pick and choose and do whatever they wanted to do. And so if you take it back to should and can and will and maybe and won't, then how do we actually make these recommendations? Because then it doesn't read as something that you have to change.
But it says that it should be redesigned to align with UDL principles. So it should already be.
Should.
We shouldn't have to highlight each principle.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I think.
Hold on.
Sorry, my comment may be more about the next slide 9. So I might wait with that, but I think since we were talking about both, I just wanted to make sure we were still doing that. So I can wait if we're still just working on 8.
Okay.
I wanted to agree with Josh. You would prefer Josh or
Josh, yeah.
Okay. Josh, I agree with Josh in the fact of the semantics of the word should or shall. I think I'm more inclined, and before that, I can see how both slides 8 and 9 could be combined together if the word shall remains on that one slide, because should
there's no timeline really on that. And shall, I feel like there's accountability to that word that I appreciate, and yeah. I think, and maybe even throwing out the idea of model, so like EPA shall model the design principles of UDL or something like that. Just to get the idea that, you know, we're asking teachers to use these principles, and are we expecting, you know, and do we have an assessment that is modeled after that? I would hope that we do.
Okay, with the change of the word maintaining on the bottom bullet, let's go ahead and take a consensus of whether we want to leave the changes for the exam structure under the UDL. So thumbs up if you agree with the recommendation, side if you're okay with it, and down if you're not.
Could you restate that?
And then keep the slide.
Keep the slide as is, except for the one change that we did incorporate down at the bottom of maintaining instead of establishing.
Or we want to remove those principles and attach them, it's like a link. Like that.
That's what I'm.
Anybody want to advocate for one or the other?
What's the something like
I don't know,
that?
shall be adjusted.
Yeah.
Say that one more time, I'm so sorry.
But we needed to decide on if we're having it prescriptive versus a list of ideas. Right now it says shall be adjusted, like everybody now has to do all of those things.
And we have the option of combining the slides.
They're originally.
Right.
Didn't hear that as an option.
Oops.
Head, Tina.
I have a friendly amendment if we're on slide, wait, what happened to slide 8? Oops. I would be a little more comfortable perhaps if the lead-in sentence says the RDI TPA work group recommends the TPA be aligned with universal design for learning principles. Instead of saying that it's being redesigned, that we're saying it has to be redesigned, that we're saying it needs to be aligned.
If my concern is, would the TPA sponsors already consider their work aligned to UDL? I mean, that's what we did.
And some are closer than others. Cal TPA probably does a little bit better job than Ed TPA. So I understand where you're coming from.
I think we put assessment structure in on purpose because of that. I think same thing with the list, like some people, and I know being a teacher, some people say they do UDL, but that's not UDL. And that's like, if they're not, yeah.
So I'm not
Share that as well.
actually, I'm fine if you want to keep the assessment structure. I really just meant that there's a requirement that the current TPAs be redesigned, and all of these things in the bullet points need to be redesigned.
So hearing from everybody, it sounds to me like in the interest of time and the fact that we that we should just leave the list as it is. And then let the commission.
Just a lot of work.
We're gonna have all these discussions.
If I may. So, you know, there's also going to be an opportunity, as we do, to indicate your level of consensus on this. And so, you know, that is going to be part of the data that goes in front of the commission. They're going to see the recommendations. In the framing, we'll let them know that there were remaining points of tension, right? The remaining disagreements, you know, there are places where, you know, we just couldn't get there. And so now it's in front of you. So, you know, I'm not saying that because it's 11:58. But maybe I am. I just wanted to, to point that out. So there it is.
So we're gonna shift, instead of it being a prioritization vote, it's gonna be a consensus vote. And that's what will be reported to the commission. Does that make sense? So it'll be a consensus vote like we've been doing. So it'll come up and it'll say 70% of the committee agree with this, rather than using that vote that we were going to do to prioritize the recommendations.
Will we provide our rationale? Like why?
We've always been able to provide
We
comment,
haven't always provided that to the commission.
but I think in this time we should.
Yes. Yep.
So after we get through this, our plan was we were gonna build that rationale.
We are. Time for
Yeah, I
that.
don't think we are gonna have time.
But I think that's a little bit. This time you'll have it, yeah. Never
But yes, we will include
mind. Comments.
comments in the presentation to the commission.
Is there anyone who wants to make all of these prescriptive?
Our group worked on them because we wanted to make sure that this actually was happening.
All the bullets?
Well, and I'll also say there are some things that we put up here because we didn't know how the local scoring section was going to play out. And so there's some things in there that we put in to make sure that if the local scoring thing was tossed, that there were still parts of that that would be local scoring still in our recommendations. And I don't even know if we still know, we've moved on from local scoring, so I don't want to bring us back to that.
Yeah.
Back to slide 5.
See you outside later.
All right, so call for the question again and then we'll move on.
All right, so we're looking first at slide 8, which is the exam structure.
So you're asking us if we're willing to send this to the CTC?
Yep.
So this is
As it's written.
Madam, check on the online people.
Have a thumbs down for.
This, right, and if there's a thumbs down, we gotta ask a one
On this one.
I have a Tina thumbs down.
Right. Tina and
Tori.
Tori, we want to hear from you both. So whichever, Tori was first, I think. Go ahead, Tori.
I'm just gonna reiterate what I already said. I mean, my objection still stands that I think it's overly prescriptive, and I don't know that I agree that it needs to be redesigned. I would like to see something a little bit more broad, that the TPA needs to be designed consistent with principles of UDL. So, and then these might be ways in which a TPA could be designed aligned with UDL principles, but not prescribing that all of these things have to be done and that that all TPAs need to be redesigned.
Thank you, Tina.
Just ditto what Tori said.
So mark it in the notes, what Tori and Tina just validated. And be sure that you share that feedback with the commission when you talk about how there's still some tensions in some of this.
So the result is this is moving forward to the commission.
Well, it will, because there was an overwhelming, even though it's not a vote, we're calling for consensus. Anybody who has a thumb down, we want to hear from them. We're going to record that in the notes so that that feedback is shared specifically with the commission. Yes.
I agree with comments too.
Okay. And Shayna also agrees. Okay. Moving it along.
Yeah.
The whole world watching the whole world.
No pressure.
And okay. All right, so moving to slide 9. So this is looking at the candidate's demonstration of practice. Any additional comments before we look at a consensus?
Tina had mentioned she had a comment on the slide earlier.
Which I think she did, but let's check. Tina.
Yeah, I do. One is, I think this is minor. The fourth bullet is a duplication of the second bullet, right?
Which one? The fourth one?
Yeah.
And the second, they're duplicate.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's take out 4.
That was a minor. My question has to do with, I had hoped that we would have somewhere in our recommendations a flexibility of, with respect to the exam itself. That was something like this. Recommend that the next generation of the TPA include one or more elements that can be modified by individual programs to meet their needs. So for instance, maybe there's a particular focus at a point in the curriculum. Let's say in the fall, a program is focused on teaching students about developing lesson objectives and planning. And so there's an element of the TPA that they can use to do that can be embedded in their program, and it could actually be submitted as part of the TPA, but it can also be modified in a way that it best does what they want it to do. It's a very broad concept. In practice, it needs a lot more thinking, but I think one of the problems that we have with the current TPAs is there isn't enough flexibility for programs to modify in ways that they can best utilize it. So I don't know if we make it a requirement, but a suggestion that the future TPAs expand flexibility for programs, just like this one is saying we're expanding flexibility for candidates.
Yeah, I just have a question about the deleting of things on these slides. If we just say we want it deleted, is it getting deleted, or do we need to have a consensus every time something is removed from these slides? Because that, even if it is duplicative, it just got deleted, and I don't even know that I looked up to see if anybody looked at me to say if I also agree with it being.
It's the exact language in this case. It was the exact.
Yeah, but I'm just saying there should be a process of us agreeing on anything from this being deleted. Yes.
I agree 100%. Thank you, Josh. So do we want to make that adjustment to this slide? Or has it already been done?
Well, no, I undid it.
So we should take a consensus now on.
Let's take a consensus. So if you agree with the suggested edit from Tina, you can give us a thumbs up. If you're neutral, or if you give a thumbs down. And I need to see a thumb from everybody. Adam, please watch the people on the.
Thumbs up. I don't see anything from Tina.
He's the one who made the recommendation.
Really?
Yeah.
Nope, right? We have 3 thumbs up. For no.
We're voting.
All right. Thank you, Josh. For consensus on the open. Now we're going to call for consensus on slide 9. So if you agree that slide 9 should move forward as a recommendation, a thumbs up, you're neutral, or a thumbs down. So I see thumbs up. Matt, Beverly.
Like it. I still am in favor of consolidating, so.
Okay. And I see a couple people.
Yeah, that's me. It should be consolidated in my opinion, but.
Anybody online?
Thinking about it.
But yeah, right.
I see a thumbs up. I see a thumb shifting. Maybe thumbs from Tori or Tina.
Okay, so in our notes, we want to see that there were 2 members who felt that it needed to be consolidated.
Am I right?
Yeah. There should be 1 slide for UDL.
Tori came off mute. I think she was. Sorry.
You have something, Tori?
No, I was just gonna say, oh, Tori came off, sorry.
I just wanted to ask, where is the suggestion that we originally had about flexibility for programs and including a component of the TPA that's relevant to their program? Are we just eliminating that? Is that gone now? Just,
Or do we want to consider that?
is it elsewhere?
I don't remember that being an actual recommendation.
I see a lot of head nodding, but people aren't sure if that was part of the recommendations.
It was back a few iterations ago, in handbook 3.
Yeah, So I think we wanna be respectful of the process, right? So we underwent a process where we rated all of the items, where we reviewed all of the items, and some of those items were eliminated. And so I feel like if we go back and we read back and bring that over now, I don't know, are you okay with that or?
So I agree. If I could just, I'll make one last point on this. There were elements of our surveys that didn't allow for comments about things that got eliminated. So this got eliminated way back and it was off people's radar. It wasn't there anymore because there wasn't a place to bring things back. So it wasn't there. So I just wanted to put it out that it was there. It's not there anymore. I think it's an important part of recommendations, but I'm just one person on this committee. So.
Thank you. Noted, very noted. All right, so we've got our comments there. You got them down, Juliet? And so now we're gonna move on to item 10, slide 10. One.
We have a bunch of people leaving at 12:30.
Yeah.
So I might suggest we work till 12:30
All right.
and break at
12:30.
that point.
Okay, 12:30 it is. All right. Let's try to at least approve a couple of others before we break.
There any comments before we take the consensus?
Read slide 10.
Tina?
I think some of this is undue, is not feasible. It's a monetary burden to the CTC. Convening regular statewide gatherings of this scope is a very huge undertaking and would take significant resources. It's a big conference. It takes a lot. I've run conferences before. So that's one concern I have with this. The second is bullet 4 might be more convoluted now that it's included in a whole list of things. I thought it was stronger when it was its own piece.
Thank you. Patricia?
I was just gonna add, I think we had talked in one of our groups about making conferences online or looking at different modalities for conferences, since now a lot more people have tech. So I just wanted to add that. Hopefully it wouldn't be as much.
Kathy?
And I just wanted to add, in terms of when we think about financial feasibility and whatnot, I think that we can make these recommendations and then CTC can decide what they or how they might want to pay for it, because they know a lot more about the financial landscape that they're dealing with than we do.
Absolutely. Any other comments before we call for the consensus?
I concur with the final bullet being strong on its own. I just think that's important on its own.
Okay, so you'd like to see that, I'm hearing, as a separate recommendation? All right, so let's talk about that. So that final bullet, develop a continuum of practice.
It
was a separate bullet.
It was.
We're separated.
Fine.
It's a separate slide before.
All of those. It's a comment that existed, bullet point 4, and then everyone was like, where? Can we confirm or deny the existence of it? No one could link it, no one could find it. So I don't know if a staff member maybe has that, or, you know what I'm talking about?
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe put it in that during lunch, we can check in.
Oh, you.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Vanessa?
We need to do a little Googling.
Oh. Is slide 19 not, or could go in conjunction with this one as well? With the last bullet point, I'm sorry, I'm agreeing and saying, yes, the last bullet point should be pulled out, and if it is, it could be in conjunction with this slide.
The program standard change?
19.
Which one is 19 now? 'Cause I
Yeah,
remember
the-
Three, right?
IDP.
Yeah, revise require use of information from the TPA to inform the development of IDP goals and develop an ILP with an induction program. It seems that's the goal of what the first recommendation might.
That's almost the same as slide 27.
Perhaps merging those. So slide 19, slide 27 could be combined with the fourth bullet on slide 10. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think 19 and 27 are mandating that the IDP be used in formulating the ILP. And the bullet up here we're talking about is
Starting the continuum.
the creation of entire continuum. of
So
learning. So
slide
I think they're
19 and
two separate.
27 can be combined, but
Right,
what bullet stands on?
that's my understanding.
The CTC staff note on the is where that
says-
comment said, but
This exists, but no one could find it.
exactly. It says a continuum practice already exists that aligns the TPEs to the CSTP.
And that was before, remember when the induction community showed up here in force? So that was actually handled already. And the reason why I know is because Tanya Almeida leads that whole community. She works. And so that worked its way into the 10 priorities that Mary Sandy Vixen has. So that has been addressed. And it was regarding the fact that they did not want to have to wait before they roll out those new CSTPs. So. No, they're okay with us doing this work, but because they've been invested in a 3-year process to update those new CSTPs, they didn't want to have to wait to roll those out. That was handled. So this is okay as it is now.
I just think that these are creating the continuum is key to making the process educative in continuing past your pre-service program. So saying that your TPA can give you insight into your work in a CSTP world. So I do think I like it as its own thing, create the continuum, and another one that says you must use your IDP must be informed by your TPA score, and your IDP serves as a foundation for your first ILP so that there's continuity. There's a reason for doing all of these things, and they're not just random disparate things I'm trying to do to jump through hoops. That's my rationale for all of it.
Okay, so we're going to call for that question. Thank you, Josh, for bringing that up, that we need to agree before we move things around. So what I'm hearing is remove bullet 4, that on a separate slide. If you're in agreement with that, if you could give me a thumbs up, in the middle, or down. And I'm gonna watch everybody in here, and Mandy, if you can check online. Okay.
Just
Another slide.
Move bullet 4 to another slide.
Number
Bullet 4 to another slide.
Yes. Yes.
You good with us doing that?
That's okay.
Something. Colin, you good with that?
Okay.
All right, so we'll move bullet 4 to a separate slide. And then we'll take those 2 additional ideas that relate to the IDP, or those 3, I should say.
Oh, yeah,
With that.
I think it's different too.
Okay, let's look at it so we can make that confirmation. I thought we had said slide 19 and slide 27 pertain to the IDP. Is that accurate? I've seen heads nod.
It's now slide 20.
Yeah, because thank you.
Because we just made a new slide.
Right. So we were suggesting that both of those ideas be captured in a single slide, that those ideas be merged. Okay? So if you're okay with that, a thumbs up. And Mandy, if you could check on the online people.
Look to the Rebecca, I can't see.
Are you okay with that?
Same slide.
Right?
Not changing any language. We didn't put it.
Okay, great. Got a little bit more time.
So now there's slides 20 and 21. Is that correct?
Yeah, these are the two that combined.
And so can we move those up now?
She just moved them together.
I don't think they align. But continue about practice, but it's just-
Yeah, you gotta keep going all the way up to the purple. Okay, so now they're all three together, 11, 12, and 13.
So 11 is the continuum by itself. 12 is TPA to
Standards
inform the
revision.
IDP. And
Another standard.
slide 13 is very similar to slide 12, is it not?
But those are about program standard changes. And slide 11 is about a continuum of practice.
Right, so we understand what's happening with the continuous of practice, the continuum of practice, that's its own recommendation. But I'm trying to clarify the difference between slide 12 and slide 13. And in slide 12, I see that we're making a recommendation that the TPA inform the IDP goals. Whereas in 13, I see an additional recommendation to program standard 3 to be revised so that a candidate's IDP should be included in the development of the ILP.
But it's induction program standard 3.
Yeah.
The other one is referring to.
Yeah, but it's the same
The
thing.
bullet, because it's on the
Yeah.
continuum, it's the same deal, right?
So do we want to, so I'm gonna ask the question. So we've got slide 12 and slide 13, which are slightly different. So do we want to do the higher level, which is modifying the program standard? Or do we want to go easier with the language in slide 12?
Or
I'd say
Well-
program standard be revised.
So
what's
Beverly-
One's an ILP, the induction, and then the other one is program as in the IHEs.
Do we just want that, or do we want that in program standard 3?
I think you could put both those things.
Both.
I think it's multiple subject, single subject, and specialists.
Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, so when Beverly, I think we were together on this one. I think when we were writing it, we were talking about we made them separate because they were separate programs. So one for the TPPs, IHEs, and one for induction. That everybody's on the same page in how we utilize these different plans. So that's why they were separate. We can put them on one side and just delineate, but program standards and induction standards all are getting updated. But if we just say broad standards, I don't think we're getting where we need to go.
That works. Put it together, but include.
Oh, yeah, say program and induction, yeah.
Just remember
And
that.
that could be a bullet under the continuum umbrella.
Just remember, before we make those changes, this group is gonna make a decision on those changes. So. The change I made. Yeah.
All of it.
Go ahead, Kathy, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh,
Kate.
I was talking to Kathy, but Kate can go.
That's Kathy, yeah. Go ahead.
What?
Did you have a thought that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so what I was saying, in terms of it being, we add them together and they would be a bullet under the continuum, because when we say the continuum, we are talking about the connection and the inclusivity of what happens in free service and connecting it and going through what's happening in induction. That was just my little thought, that's all. So that's why it made sense to me.
Kate.
They said it. Good job, Rebecca.
Go, Rebecca. All right. So now let's approve the language that we've added, slide 12. So the RDA TPA work group recommends that EPP program standards and induction program standards be revised to require use of . So if you're okay with that language, you want to see a thumbs up or down? If you're okay with that language, and if somebody can monitor the online.
Got 3 thumbs up online.
Really quick, we worked hard on the slide that was pinkish red, the actual wording that we would appreciate including. And I know that it's very similar, but like we specifically said we would like this wording. I don't know how much
Copy that is, we do this and make it as a bullet
Is
under.
that okay? Just so it's not lost in. Yeah, no, thumbs up. Copy, thanks.
Awesome.
Maybe they're not thumbs up now though, so.
No, I think, are you okay with that?
Oh.
Right. Thank you, thank you.
Read online. Oh,
Thank you for
fantastic.
reading that one.
So we're
Want
just,
me to do one more?
Oh, is it the money?
It's just,
I know, it's a
this one.
real quick.
Good.
Okay, so if you approve slide 11 as it is, thumbs up, that's the continuum.
Okay.
How are we doing online?
online.
Think it's just.
Thank you.
Really knocking this job out of the park right now.
Okay.
Trying to.
Slide 12, as it currently reads,
We
thumbs up.
Did that.
did that one.
That one.
That was just for the language change, okay? Okay. And now,
Read online.
that was it?
Yep.
Okay,
Slide 13.
let's go for 13.
I had a question on what is financially accessible.
Well, that was, that was the gist of it, because if you say affordable to one person may not be affordable to another. Sure. So then we said financially feasible, because we were thinking, well, what about, the possibilities of, not that we're recommending this exactly, but, like a sliding scale, or, what does it mean to be financially accessible in terms of a person's actual context and their actual situation? Because that could look different for other people. So we settled on that language instead of saying affordable. That's all. Semantics.
So two things. A grant program already exists for tuition and it's slowly phasing out because it's not sustainable. And it used to be the Apple grant and now it's something else. Tell me again. Golden State. It was not feasible and it is not feasible and it's being phased out. And so if they want to re-up the Golden State grant, that would just solve this problem. That would be fabulous. The second thing is, so there's that. But as far as like loan stipends and vouchers, those are all essentially the same thing. And our conversation and where I really landed with this conversation is we really need to encourage programs to offer vouchers, because if a student cannot afford to purchase the $300, $350 ed TPA, which is more expensive, where they will put it is a credit card at 20% interest. And if they have a voucher, it can be folded into their student aid, which is at like 6.75 interest. We're talking about the people who do not have $300 to spend. And these are our people who are most vulnerable. And we're asking them, well, it's just $300. And it's not just $300. And so if it's not folded into their student aid, their only alternative is credit cards. And the grant programs exist, or if they do exist, they would already be taking advantage of it, or they can't take advantage of the grant program because it's not folded into their tuition. The Golden State grant does not forgive my credit card debt. It forgives my tuition debt. And so the grants already exist, and it doesn't make sense unless universities are encouraged to do the voucher program. I get it. Is there a better way? I'm real mad about this, guys. 20% is too much. Sorry.
May I respond?
Yeah.
We, in our group, we thought that is above our pay grade and we will let the commission
Exactly.
decide
Exactly.
what to do.
Yeah, you're not, but did they?
But can you record that in the notes about the 6% versus the 20%?
Yeah, but you're right. You're absolutely right, because like you say, grants come and go, and under this current context, stuff is going. So again, but I would kind of default back to what I was saying before in terms of, we make the recommendation and, we tried to make it broad enough to just give the idea, ideas and include everything, but they are going to have to make that decision because they are the ones who know where the money's coming from. They know how to structure it. We don't. We don't know that yet. There could be something that we don't even know at this point.
Vanessa and then Kate.
One of the language that was in here before was a grant or loan system. And so we added these examples as options to the commission because we were at the point of like, this is above our pay grade, but we kept that initial sentence in saying, we recommend that it be free or financially accessible. I did bring up, it says on the bottom about program embedding it into program tuition. I brought that up earlier and somebody was saying that it was less feasible than doing something more like this. And so part of our rationale was making sure that we stated, we want this to be free and financially accessible. But we didn't know how that could happen. So we were adding these.
Thank you. We've got Kate, Josh, Devin, and Bev. Kate?
No such thing as free. It'll be subsidized by somebody.
Right.
Right. And I don't have my pay grade as an educator to tell you what's financially feasible. And if we don't say to the commission that this is not financially feasible for many people because they have said that to us, taking it twice is $600 because it's 2 before free. And if they don't have any place to go that's built into their student loans, that's going on a credit card. And like, we are the only people that have said this out loud. And we were saying it out loud for the first time this week. So the commission isn't going to address it. It's not above my credit grade. This is directly my financial well-being. And so if we don't put teeth in this, if this is something we need, I don't know that it's going to be high on the priority list. Like, universities have to build this into their pay structure system. It's going to be hard. Everything's hard. Everything's hard.
We can do hard stuff.
Yeah.
So I agree with all the stuff. We're also assuming that they're getting a credit card too, that they have the access to get a credit card.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
And I think that should say such as, I like all the suggestions there. I would even go so far as to say a forgivable loan as an option as well, not just a loan, a forgivable loan. And then that comment down with the markup in tuition, that scares me because that's exactly what universities are going to do. And so I would say without increasing the cost of assessment, it should be without increasing the cost to the student.
And I'm gonna just say, I gotta throw this out there, but honestly, you know, we talk about these things, but people have to pay for bar exams. They gotta pay for medical boards. I mean, there is a cost associated with.
But just because other people do it doesn't mean that we have to keep it going.
No, but what I'm saying is that like the feasibility, right? The feasibility issue. And so where is it gonna be? How is it gonna be? And again, the commission, knowing what is coming down the pike in terms of grant streams or, you know, legislation or whatever, I think it needs to live with them. We can make the suggestion like we're doing, but I do think that it has to have some, and I think it has teeth. I think we're saying make it affordable. We just don't know exactly how that looks.
Thank you, Devin. We have Bev and Elisa.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I share your feelings and we discussed this a little bit. It's not, I tell you now, it's not that easy for universities just to simply say, we're gonna provide a voucher. It's a huge process, it's a huge undertaking, and it involves a lot of people. So I'm not thinking that's going to be an option. There are some institutions I know now that do it, but to make that change to say, we're gonna provide this additional tuition to cover the cost of your TPAs, it's not that easy. And so I like the recommendation. Again, throwing it out there. I don't know if the CTC is in a position to say, okay, institutions, you're going to have to do this. That's not going to happen. But again, we don't know. So let's just throw it out there, see what happens.
Along the lines of what Devin just said, the idea of embedding it in tuition, I see your idea that will make it part of then student financial aid. But it doesn't happen that way. The system like the CSU or the UC, any kind of tuition raise or fee increase has to go through the Board of Trustees, the Board of Regents. It's a big public thing. You have student protests all over the place about raising student fees, and trustees are very reluctant to do it. You can't just say embedded in tuition. It doesn't work that way. Even if it did, the people who are providing student loans have stipulations about what student loans can be used for. And they may not just say, okay, now you can use it for this. that wouldn't happen either. I can see the intent of trying to make it affordable for students, although I hear what Kathy's saying too. But that is just not a feasible way to do it. It won't happen.
Thank you, Alyssa.
I think something that may have gotten lost in translation with this, I think in some of the original thinking around this was for this to be not only affordable or accessible to students, but also as a potentially as a retention strategy. So like in terms of like loans or grants, like is it feasible to say that if you are, and I don't know if Cal State, I don't know grants, if the grants do this already, but is it feasible to say if you we'll pay for your TPA as long as you stay as a California teacher for X amount of years.
Well, that was the original language because it was built on
Like a legislative.
governor's teacher ship. Awesome.
This is gonna be really unsatisfying for me to say, right? It's like the best you can do is express the interest clearly, which I think you have done at a grain size that is appropriate. But you're on this and on other things, you're gonna want to determine how it will happen. And this is simply too big of a state.
Can't do it.
And I think that, I think that grain size here is important. I think your interest, your intent is clear on this one. Right. And there are a lot of variables. So there's a limit to how specific you can design or constrain. Although I would ideologically fully agree.
And know that you're standing between us and lunch.
No, put it back down. I was just gonna say the more prescriptive you are, the more likelihood they'll say no.
All right, so given everything that we've heard, do you want to amend the language in slide 13 or leave it as it is?
I liked the cost to the student, cost of the assessment. And I think that's what we were getting to. We just didn't know what the right word in our group at that time.
We want to modify it to say.
That's okay. I don't know if it's a consensus.
You're okay with it as it is then?
Again?
You're okay with the language as it is?
No, just change it to the cost to the student instead of without increasing the cost to the student.
Of the
assessment. To the candidate. There you
If
go.
you agree with that adjustment, make it say without increasing the cost of the exam to the student. To the candidate, thumbs up. I see you guys are well ahead of me.
I see a mid online, one mid. I see one thumbs up. See two thumbs up and a mid.
Oh, she switched.
Is it the cost to the candidate or the cost to the candidate?
Without increasing the cost to the candidate.
There
you go.
Okay, that's it.
And then delete the top part of that slide.
Right.
Let's take a consensus vote on that.
All right. If you agree with that language as it is, if you could give us a thumbs up.
I have two thumbs up online. I have three thumbs up online.
Can we move on if I don't thumbs up?
If you give it in the middle, we can. Means I can live with it. Okay, so.
Lunch.
Lunch.
Time for lunch. All right.
Okay, so we are going.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm taking it.
Back and make it a working lunch here.
It's not the use.
What we're gonna ask is.
The drama we have to go. through.
Yeah.
Any kind of tuition or any kind of whatever.
University and how much public is there?
I think it is. It's towards the tail end.
We can get all the way over there, eat and come back in 20.
No.
That was too long.
The lines.
The lines, it'll take us 20 minutes just to.
Just to get the
Forms.
All right, 1:15. Back at 1:15, ready to rock and roll.
Right. People online to watch me eat. I do.
I'm used to it being in front of people.
All right, we are ready to begin again, but we cannot do so until all members on Zoom have turned their cameras on.
Right, got it, Corey. And it.
Woo-hoo, there we go. Got it. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had enough time to see the sunshine and take care of yourself. We are going to resume the work that we had started before lunch. So we will be starting on slide 14. If you refresh, you should see everything. I got on. All right, so we're still in that financial realm, that world. This one's talking about costs associated with local scoring embedded in the program. Does anyone want to make any comments, potential revisions?
Grouping this, that should probably be with the local scoring thing that goes, right?
Should I move it up?
How about we make a note at the bottom?
Local scoring would happen.
It's like, you know, I mean. It's not really. Tina has her hand up.
Tina.
I'm concerned that if we make this a recommendation and there isn't funding that comes through from the state, that it could kill the local scoring work.
Well, I don't know that we can control those factors. So I think we leave it to the commission to make the decision and deal with that as it sees fit. I'm open to other thoughts.
So, Tina, the alternative would be not to put a specific recommendation about funding the efforts and just leave that open. Because then we're not specifying. Tell me more.
I agree it would be great if this work was funded. It would be great if the state had funding to fund this work. What I don't know if there's a way to put a sentence in here that said we want the scoring work to go ahead regardless, but there was when we were first doing this work almost 30 years ago, as Mary reminds us, the legislation had funding in it. And when the funding was not able to come through, then the work stopped for a decade. And except that other programs took it up on their own to continue doing the work, but it was put on a pause by a lot of other work and a lot of other programs. And that's what I don't want to happen to this, is that this work gets paused because a recommendation was that the state should come through for funding. And it can't. I don't know, maybe recommendation is a word that is a problem.
I don't know that we. Especially given the complex. I would love to be able to control those variables, believe me. I just don't know. Or not, it says recommend or must.
So, Tina, the option would be not to include a recommendation on how it's paid for, because that might actually stifle its implementation inadvertently. So then we would just pull this one and just move forward. Yeah.
I guess that's my question. Is it a benefit to make recommendation? Commissioners see the recommendation and so that they know where we stand, or are we better off removing the recommendation?
I think we can acknowledge that there are costs associated with locally scoring the work. I think there was somewhere in one of our recommendations, a way to explore the possibilities for how the work can be funded or structured differently, or et cetera. I don't remember where it was anymore.
There was. So Kathy and then,
I think Bev was first.
okay, go ahead. Whoever was first.
All right, I'm just kind of going back to, again, that there are a lot of factors that we cannot control, that we do not know about in terms of financial streams and where the money comes from. I do think it's important for us to make this recommendations, even though they may go nowhere, because we don't know how they're going to be funded, or they may not be funded, and they may die because they're not funded. But I do believe it's important for us to make the recommendations so that they understand that we think certain things are important. And where it goes from there, we don't have control over that. And, but I do think that it's critical that we absolutely tell them that we think this is something that needs to happen. And we don't know how to pay for it. You may not know how to pay for it, but I do think that was part of our charge, is to make recommendations based upon what we consider to be best practices and what we consider to be in the best interest of our candidates. So I do feel it's important for us to make a recommendation, even though we don't know how it's going to be paid for, or we may not think, we don't know. Again, that's something that the commission can look into.
Thank you, Kathy. Bev?
I think this paragraph is confusing as to what it is we're actually recommending here, because it starts, instead of starting with the recommendation, it starts with a qualifier. Then you have to go down a little bit. We recommend that. Then you keep going, be funded from the state. So that's what this recommendation is, that local scoring costs be funded from the state. And so the idea that we take that funding recommendation out, that is the recommendation. This is not a recommendation that local scoring be done. It doesn't say that anywhere. You parse the words, this is just saying the state should fund the extra costs. So I think we need to be clear, what's the recommendation in this one? Is it that local scoring be done? Is it that local scoring be done and funded by the state? Is it, I don't know what we're recommending, because that assumption at the beginning, the later language isn't clear to me.
I agree with Deb, really. I think that this is a little confusing, particularly with the earlier slide. Caused my slide caused so much contention.
Slide.
And I think there's some issues here that link with that as well. At the moment, no one locally scores, and there's nowhere where we're saying that people should be required to do local scoring. And I think that this is, I don't worry that it's not going to be feasible, right? Because I think you're right. We should be able to say to the commission that this is what we would recommend. But I just wonder why we're recommending something that no one has taken advantage of in the past. Funding, even when funding was really good, no one wanted to do local scoring. I don't know what we're going to do. If we mean the local scoring that actually is consequential for the candidate, we're talking about local scoring that's done as part of practice and part of development of the organisation and providing better support, then that's a different sort of local scoring. I'm a bit confused, really.
So what are we recommending?
So Alyssa, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think if we take a look at the last piece to that, again, it has this, make the assessment financially accessible to the candidate. I think this was an attempt to say that whether or not you do have local scoring or that there's additional financial burdens that happen, don't put it on the teachers, is basically, I think, what the intention of that was. But I feel like, we had a lot of discussion about that in the last before lunch slide.
And did you feel like that previous slide captured the essence of the idea that's contained in this slide? Or do we need to add an additional idea?
What is the idea of this slide?
The idea is that regardless of whatever other shenanigans come up, we don't want the financial burden to be placed on the backs of the candidates. Because we heard that candidates are not passing. They're not passing, and then they have to repay for coursework that they're gonna have to.
This is not about local scoring at all.
But it's about the cost, right?
Right, it's about the
They have
cost.
to repay for the cost of courses, they have to repay for the cost of the exams. So all of that theoretically happens on the back of the candidate. So what I'm taking away from this slide is we don't want that to happen. Okay.
So I think possibly, and I'm interpreting the difference in this slide, is that there's cost, administrative costs associated with changing a product. And so we're hoping that the administrative cost of changing the product that is the TPA, whether that be changing rubrics or changing scoring guides, in a perfect world, that would not be passed on. I'm just clarifying here. Correct, or the labor would not be passed on to the people taking the assessment and instead would be absorbed as administrative cost from above. Is that what this is saying? Yeah, so this one's different in that way. The previous one, that was actually just the cost itself of taking. Someone.
Thank you.
Am I sure? Okay, sorry.
Corey, and then Ben, then Kathy.
Yep, I was just gonna say that I do think this is related to local scoring because I don't know who was just speaking, maybe Kathleen, I don't know, sorry. But this is suggesting that there are going to be additional costs to guarantee inter-rater reliability, calibration, et cetera, and that those need to be picked up and not passed on to programs or candidates, is my interpretation of this one.
Thank you, Tori. Yeah.
He said what I said. I don't think it's about the redesign. I think it's about the cost that goes in with local scoring. And they're making sure, because what will happen is institutions will have to spend more money to locally score. So they want to make sure the cost that institutions incur don't go to candidates for tuition. That's how I read it.
Kathy and then Mary. Mary.
Just a point of history, prior to going to centralized scoring, when everything was 100% locally scored, for the Cal TPA, we had a staff team that traveled to regions and to campuses and worked on just these very things. The inter-rater reliability, kind of providing the technical assistance as professional development to the faculty and supervisors and whoever was involved in the scoring and evaluation of candidates' readiness. That was a cost that we bore as the program sponsor. And at the time, there was no charge for Cal TPA for candidates. I don't remember how the PACT consortium did this, but I believe that they also engaged as a collaborative. Colin can verify that in collaboratively working toward the inter-rater reliability. I think Tina Sloan said in yesterday's local scoring session that they together would calibrate as a faculty at UC Santa Barbara by scoring several of their candidates together and getting to a common ground and understanding of their rubrics before then everybody taking on a piece. So it seems imminently possible for local scoring to work without a cost to candidates. We know this because we had 10 years of history doing that. Just as historic information, if it's useful or not. So
I'm going to get us back to the slide. What do we want to do with this? Do we want to adjust it? Do we want to? Yeah.
Is it about, we don't want the fees to go up? Is that basically what we're saying, no matter what it's based on, local scoring or redevelopment?
Or if they go up,
whatever. Because who's setting the fees now?
It's saying that they don't want it to be passed on to the candidates.
That's right. But that's what I'm saying.
Sorry, I'll just make a suggestion. If that sentence about not being passed on to the candidate was the first sentence, and then the things come after, then that gives the purpose of it.
So
Very
any
clear.
cost, whether it's the redesign or the local scoring or whatever, we don't want passed on to the candidate. But then we've got to say, well, so who is absorbing it?
Well, you don't
Because-
necessarily have.
I know, but it's like.
Let the commission decide. Well, you could let the commission staff work on that.
Right,
feasibility
right.
Commission. Leanne.
Okay, so I'm hearing, so I'm gonna recap. I'm hearing that what we want to do is we want to grab that last part, put it at the beginning to emphasize that that is the,
That's what this is.
That's the purpose of it, yeah.
so if you're okay with that, show me a thumbs up.
Got a thumb online. I've got a three, two,
Perfect.
2 thumbs up.
or do we have a? Oh.
All right,
But
so
I need to make sure that I captured. Recommends that additional costs, and I'm,
No, I was ringing.
Tina,
I just want to make sure so if the purpose is that the costs are not passed on to candidates, that's great if that's a central focus. My concern is saying that it should be funded by the state. And if that doesn't come through,
I think what we're saying is that we can't predict that. So we're gonna make that recommendation to the commission and trust that the commission is gonna handle that in the best manner possible.
And back to my historic comment, it was born by the model sponsor. So the
Yeah.
commission was the model sponsor for Cal TPA. We went out and did training and calibration work. The PACT was sponsored by the PACT consortium. They took care of this. And we didn't set for that other than calibration and scoring consistency being a necessity.
write out some language. That's all. Costs related to changes to the assessment and or scoring not be passed on to the candidates.
Can I move to delete the middle sentence, the middle paragraph, whatever you want?
I was
I
gonna
think we're gonna
delete the
delete
whole thing.
everything under the first sentence.
Right.
Okay, Rebecca's clapping.
So if you're in agreement with deleting all the rest, then show me a thumbs up.
Three online.
All right, and we got everybody here. Hey, all right, let's move on. Moving on to slide 15. Comments on this one?
Good question.
Go ahead.
I am not at the university level. How reasonable is this expectation from the folks that actually are looking at the TPAs day in, day out? Like, is this a reasonable expectation? The feedback on properly.
It is. It means modifying the rubric. So the current rubrics actually have several areas that they're assessing. And so when the candidate receives the feedback, there's no indication of which of those elements they didn't meet. So what this is saying is it's suggesting that we train the trainers to be able to provide that feedback. In other words, that they would pick the particular elements that the candidate didn't meet and share that back with them.
Probably require rubric adjustments.
Right. Yeah.
The word assessors mean the same as scorers? Is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
Could we use that because teacher performance assessment assessors sounds dumb. So if we're talking about the scorers, right? We should just say scorers.
If you're comfortable changing assessors to scorers, a thumbs up. How are we doing online, Adam?
We have
Yes, we have
three
three
thumbs.
thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Fantastic.
I like what is written in the notes, in the presenter notes, just as a, can we simplify even more? Like, could this line in the notes be enough?
I would like to just to point out that the recommendations you're looking at have evolved over several iterations with a lot of feedback. And so, substantive changes in the moment are tricky. And again, I'm going to just say the things that might be disappointing. That's my thought.
Is it good as it is, or do we need to modify it any further?
Set of assessor knowledge.
Wait, did I miss one? Deepening. Yeah.
Yep, the last bullet.
Score no.
Have a recommendation that asks for an asset-based.
Back up in the exam structure one.
Yeah. And I think that it's here.
It's also in the beginning, TPA scores provide individualized, asset-based and actionable.
So you could probably,
Back on slide 8, it talks about streamlining and redesigning, but it doesn't say asset-based rubrics, but it does say redesigning rubrics. We could include it there. That's the other slide that has rubrics on it.
Yeah, one of the comments saying, it assumes or an actual asset-based rubric in order to apply that.
In order to do this, yeah. Okay, let's vote on slide 15 first, and then we can take up that as a separate action. Would that be okay, Jason? Great.
Slide 15. Okay.
There's two ideas floating around. Can you restate what we're voting on for 15 then, please?
The entirety of 15.
Yeah,
Do you
so-
like it as written?
As a recommendation. So thumbs up if you're good with it as it is. Thumbs middle if you could live with it, and a thumbs down if you can't. How are we doing online?
I see one thumb online. I see a mid, one thumb up, two thumbs up and a mid.
Okay, so it passes.
Okay, so now we'll take up what Jason was just suggesting to align the two that speak to rubrics and adding the word asset-based to before the word rubric on slide 8. So it would say streamlining and redesigning asset-based rubrics.
I'd be creating asset-based rubrics because I don't know that they are currently asset-based.
How about streamlining and redesigning rubrics to be asset-based?
I like
Ah.
that, like that.
Does everyone know what an asset-based rubric is? I don't really.
So
Someone clarify.
So I think the current rubric you look at, so there's criteria and you look at the evidence and you look to see if the candidate is meeting the evidence. So I honestly don't know.
Well, so an asset-based rubric is starting with like a basic level of what the candidate can do and continues to build on that, as opposed to using language about like this submission lacks in this area. So that's much more of a deficit orientation to it.
And in that case, I would say the TPA rubrics are somewhat asset-based because for the level 3,
The Ed TPA they are.
right, though, we do start with the level 3. That's true. That's a shift.
Okay.
So now that we've answered that question, next.
So we have to decide if we're going to approve that change on slide 8, if we have consensus on that change.
Thumbs up to the middle or down.
Line, we have two thumbs up on line, two thumbs up. We have mid.
Was mentioned. Right.
And the
Anything.
words.
Okay.
We did, oh, I thought we.
Right.
Like down to 16. Okay, we're moving back to slide 16.
It does say this was addressed in an interim actions, so.
Well, that was the question we had earlier.
Yeah.
Should we?
So we said keep it in because.
Keep it in because then it, but then this does not include the other component of the interim action, right? That talks about no condition codes related to content. Right now, that's missing out of our list of recommendations, right? But this captures the technical code part.
Did I not copy some over version?
No, I think that's what this was.
This is more of a content-based condition codes are addressed pretty conclusively in the interim actions, and that will be carried forward. This technical condition codes, or if it's called a different thing, may persist. Basically, if you messed up on a technical thing, how quickly can we kick that back to you so you can address it? That's really the time interval is I think the
key piece here.
Key piece here, and this is the kind of thing where mentioning the proposal process where it's like, this is kind of a spec we would put on it. If there is a technical issue based on blah, 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 we're asking for a 1 week turnaround. That's something you can do.
And so it is indeed addressed in the interim items, actions.
No, we're saying keep it.
No, it's not.
Keep it.
Because the time part of this is key.
I've heard discussion in this group about we really, with the technical condition codes, don't want that to go through the scoring apparatus in order to be flagged and kicked back out and then identified because of how far back that puts you.
So even though there's a little redundancy, we're gonna keep it.
Yeah, I would say.
Well, if people
If
agree.
people agree.
Yep.
So
So
if,
we could probably take the top part off. So it just lives as a,
The recommendation.
so if you're in agreement with this recommendation, you know the protocol.
I have 2 thumbs up online.
On half of that.
Oh, yeah.
So never mind, yeah.
I was standing. You're doing it for me.
All right, are we good online?
we're going to slide 17.
Thoughts or feedback on slide 17?
I'm just relying on a couple of other things. I'm wondering if there's some language changes we can make that don't cause it to be reliant on a couple of other things. So for example, local scoring or local, what was the word on your slide, right?
Yeah.
Local analyzing.
Analysis.
Analysis. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways of making it so it doesn't get phased out because other things get phased out.
Corey?
I'm just wanting clarification on what is meant by programs must monitor and evaluate outcomes from embedding the TPA in coursework and clinical practices. The practice.
I think that speaks to the assessment analysis component that we spoke about earlier.
Then do we need it here?
Potentially. I think it ties it together. It's the term that we used.
Analysis of student.
Analysis of student work. Does the group feel like if we bring that over here, that would tie it together better, or is it good as is?
I'm confused. I like it as it is, how I'm interpreting. right?
How are you interpreting it?
But I'm not sure that it's clear enough about what it means when we say and both formative and final TPA experiences into coursework and clinical practices and be given individualized and specific feedback.
So,
This, I think, is one of the most crucial things that we talk about with our candidates is what level of feedback can I give, not to the formative ones, but to the final teaching performance assessment? What type of feedback am I allowed to give to those students? And are we really clear about it? Are the program sponsors clear?
I know there's a lack of clarity in the community about what type of feedback people can give.
I think that I think I've worked on this one twice now, and I think the reason why we put individualized specific feedback is to shift to feedback, right? And
Real feedback.
this is allowed, and some people I know have concerns about that because it's a licensure exam, and like you want that to be what they can do. But I think the heart of it was that yes, they can have feedback, and that no, it is not duplicative of another assignment that you already do, and not the baby steps assignments that get them there, but that you're not doing a full practice run so that they have to go through it again, that they have to do it again in induction. We also wanted people later on in accreditation to have the opportunities, the data from their scoring in their accreditation reports, which technically they can't do now because those are two separate things. And so we wanted to be able to legitimize that, building it into your curriculum, giving feedback in your curriculum, and then ultimately being able to use that for accreditation. I hope I represented that clearly.
I get all the first bit. I'm still, and I think it's absolutely right what you just said. I absolutely think that. I just would like it to be much clear about what we mean by that for the final TPA. What is the feedback? If we think about feedback that we would give in a classroom in high school, or that you get as a PhD candidate, that you get from your supervisor, that feedback is detailed and, you know, telling you where you need to add, where you need to do this, you need to go back and do that. And whether we're saying that we're now recommending that that be clearly stated as something you're allowed to do to support.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say those strike through words were intended to be removed from this?
I think, okay, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, felt like those would contribute to the duplicative nature of it if we kept both. And so if you keep formative and final, that's almost like assuming that universities would have like a full practice run, and then they would do the TPA, and then they would get feedback on the TPA. And we really want to discourage folks from feeling like they have to do it more than once to get their students through if there's other ways that they can scaffold and get feedback. That was kind of our outside thinking rationale as they struck that through. That we give flexibility to make decisions on your campus that are best for your students. You probably know more.
No, so I'm thinking about the word formative, and as I'm listening, I'm just sort of toggling between formative for the candidate as they're completing the TPA, leading up to the submission, versus like formative as you get feedback about the submission that then moves on with you. I think this is kind of what you're talking about in terms of the continuum. So I'm not sure what the intention of that particular line was, whether it was about the experience being formative or the scoring, the results you get from the scorer should be detailed and individualized enough to where I can use that information as formative in my career or, you know, in induction. So I think maybe, I don't know, but when I see that the phrase that's has the line through formative and final, that's what I was sort of toggling between. I'm not sure what the intention was or is.
Alyssa and then Kathy.
Yeah, I think I think it was, I think it was confusing for formative and final. And just kind of, I think the intention is to, have that strikeout be removed, because, you know, hopefully all TPA experiences, the embedding needs to, whatever TPA experience we were hoping that would be embedded in the clinical and coursework.
And that they would get feedback on every step. So we were recommending that we move formative and final, and that instead it would read the RDI TPA work group recommends embedding TPA experiences into coursework and clinical practice. Candidates shall be given individual specific feedback. That was the thought. So we've got Kathy and then Tina.
Yeah, the way I read it, I was looking at it and it seemed to me that the strikeout of both formative and final and using the TPA experiences, because I think that they wanted to make sure that it was clear that they were talking about all of the experiences that are embedded through the program for the TPA. Because formative and final implies that possibly like a couple of key assessments here and then the final submission. And so I think that it was trying to clarify, to include and to make sure that it was understood that this was meant to be all the experiences that relate. At least that's the way I interpreted it.
As well. Thank you. Tina.
Now that I'm reading this one, I'm seeing that there seem to be three different things in it. The first is about embedding. And I think that originally came up because our staff said program standard 5 doesn't include something specific using embedded as the language. The second thing that's in here is about candidate feedback, and there's the next slide, 18, and one later on also has candidate feedback. And the third thing in here is about using data, the programs using data, evaluating how the embedded nature of the work is working so that it informs program practice. So I kind of think that in our efforts to consolidate, we might have made one recommendation that's got three different things in it. And I might suggest that with respect to the feedback, the next slide and one later on might give us the language we're all talking about.
Yeah.
I was hearing Juliet, Tina, I agree. There's not here, but we had notes on like which slides could actually be consolidated and we didn't get around to it. But Juliet, I did send the updated speaker notes for slide 17 and we want to swap that out. That supported some of the language of trying to piece those four separate things together.
Can I delete these speaker notes?
And it might be slide 24 is the slide about embedding the TPA in the program standard 5. Maybe they are better being separate or clearer. I don't know. It means more recommendations, but I think they are different. That's just my thought.
Number one thought is I'm not sure it should be TPA experiences. I think it should be TPA tasks. And then I do really appreciate how 18 is written, which specifically talks about program standards. I do think we should take 5B out and write program standards kind of to be consistent with our other recommendations. But I think this does a nice job of dealing with that piece of it, and so therefore that piece could be removed from 17.
I agree with that proposal.
So call for the question so we can edit.
Okay, so let's look at slide 18. I think we should probably vote on that one first. right? And then we can backwards to 17.
Yes.
So you like the way that recommendation on slide 18 is written?
You're in agreement with the language as it appears.
Can we change it to program standards?
Yeah, instead of,
Yeah.
instead of specifying 5B, take that out.
So if you're in agreement with it, thumbs up, middle, or down. In here, we've got everybody who's online.
Sheena's, everyone's up online.
Okay.
Come on.
I'll be on your game.
Keep falling asleep.
I know.
All right.
Sleep on the job.
So he was, I know. He just dropped off. I know, he just-
I know we just,
Oh dear, never mind.
That's harsh.
Fine.
I know we just approved it. But I would like to point out that it does contradict a little bit. I just heard that really important conversation about taking out the both formative and final TPA experiences. And that language is used on
I
18.
think it's okay in here though, it was in a different context. I think, I was seeing it as being in a different context.
But we want to say all tasks.
Find either way.
Task. I think they can be consistent with our language.
Tasks.
All TPA work?
All TPA tasks. If you're in agreement with the language of all TPA tasks, thumbs up. How are we doing online?
Yeah, so we got some.
Everybody online is sideways.
Sideways.
Al is doing, oh, Bree, what are you doing?
Oh,
She's head low.
I did something. I don't know.
Al's doing the head version of it, side to side.
You have something you want to say, Tori?
Al's there. Hi, Al.
I'm just not sure about adding all TPA tasks. That's all.
But you can live with it if you have to, or no?
It feels I'm in favor of the least restrictive recommendation instead of and this feels like it's adding a restriction.
Okay, thank you.
Why task and not experiences? Because why would you want to make that change? I liked experiences because it was a little broader kind of, I'm in line with what Tori's saying. What was the reasoning behind changing it to tasks instead of experiences?
What are experiences? I see what the tasks are. It's what they're told to do.
And inside a program, if we're talking about embedding all of the parts of, all of the things that are required, you could have an experience in a classroom that's not necessarily a task.
Associated with the
Right.
classroom management.
Exactly. So I'm saying not everything is going to be a specific task. There are some experiences that are related to how you are your thing. And also the formative feedback, that's an experience, not a task. So that's all I'm just saying. I'm like with Tori, I'm like, it needs to me, when you say task, that restricts it to something very specific and not necessarily other things that could and should be captured in the formative experiences of it.
Also, just that for TPA, we use the word task. And there are 3 tasks that they do, and I think it would specify it down to being task 1, task 2, task 3. It would be seen in that like using the word task.
Could we change it to say timely feedback throughout the TPA process?
That's it.
Process.
Process.
Yeah.
Hold on, it already says throughout the process.
Oh, that's true. That's.
No, but so just take.
Just take
Yeah.
Take out.
mission.
And then just go throughout the TPA process. There you go.
So if you're good with that language as it appears there, and that feels comfortable, then give us a thumbs up.
I'm not
Thumbs up online?
Kathy?
Oh, yep.
He's on it.
Adam.
Want to hear from you.
All right, so let's go back and adjust the previous language that referred to the task as well and replace it with that terminology.
Yeah. Okay, so
Let's get deleted. Is that what we're saying?
It popped up.
So first, we're talking about TPA.
Want to say the same thing we said for the other one?
So the TPA process.
Yes.
Then that's not what that is. That's talking about a specific TPA task being embedded in the coursework, right? I think there is where you have to write.
That makes sense. Okay.
Tina's got her hand up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if we could look at slide 24 before we start revising this slide, because maybe we want to pull these three things back out into individual recommendations, which 24 is about embedding.
Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, let's look at slide 24.
Can we copy what's written on 24 and just currently paste it into 17 so we can see it all?
That makes sense.
Then
It's smaller.
Back on 17, guys.
we're bringing the other one up to 17. So everybody stay on 17. And then, yep. We agree that what we just did on slide 18 covers the second sentence. Candidates shall be given individualized feedback. That we covered on 18, right? So we can take it out from here. Is everyone comfortable taking the highlighted sentence out?
Kathy, come on, girl, stay with us. Sorry.
Thumbs up from Tina.
Ben, you with us?
Oh, we're all thumbs up on.
So that's going away.
Great.
The audible guess.
Seven, get there.
Feel like the 20.
It seems like it's about embedding and feedback. Or feedback as a part of embedding. Was that an embedding recommendation or a feedback recommendation?
The bottom part, or which part are you?
Bottom part.
I think it's both. I think I might argue that this last sentence on this page is covered on 18 now. That the first sentence on this page could be reorganized with what's at the top, maybe consolidated as a separate recommendation. And then the additional one being the next two sentences in the middle.
So if you agree that that bottom part there has already been captured in slide 18, give us a thumbs up. So when you look at slide 17, that bottom part that's highlighted in green, that has already been captured in slide 18. Give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, 4 thumbs up on mine.
Okay, we got a thumbs down. What you got for us, Jason?
Missing the implementation of the feedback.
I see. Can we add that in here for one? Oh, wait.
This part.
It had to implement feedback and assessed on their implementation of feedback.
I have a question. How are they assessed on their on their implementation of it?
So if you give them feedback and you're like, have you incorporated this element of the rubric? And they look at it and then they say, oh, I haven't. Then they go back and they incorporate that. Then it's been implemented. They received the feedback and the feedback has been implemented.
All right, so on their implemented feedback. So you're not assessing them on what they did first, you're assessing them on what they implemented. Not on their ability to implement.
The fact that they actually.
They have, okay. I think it should, I would find it clearer to use the word used, implemented. Rather than. Implementation makes it seem like it's the process of it that we're assessing, not.
Take out the assess part because it says candidates will receive and implement feedback.
They're teaching and be assessed on
You
implemented,
have evidence that they
Implemented feedback, yeah.
be assessed on the implemented feedback. In slide 18 in that middle paragraph there, Juliet.
Oh, yeah, well, so that, I went too far ahead and I shouldn't have done that. Because I think people were still talking about the sentence on slide 17. I moved it to 18 to try and bring it into there, but I don't think that we were ready to go there yet.
But but it reads fine if you make it say they're teaching and be assessed on the implemented feedback.
Yep, I did it on 17.
And if you're comfortable with that modification, you could give us a thumbs up.
Modification.
One vote.
All right.
Slide 8.
Line. We've got a mids, 3 mids. Oh.
Matt, you good? All right.
So then that would be able to be deleted from slide 17.
Okay, and then that was.
Yes. Okay. So now talking about the sentence at the bottom and the sentence at the top. Are they saying the same thing?
I was adding the program standards.
Mm-hmm.
We might add the word tasks.
If we use the bottom one and we say to embed the TPA tasks in, should we say coursework and clinical practice? You take out both. It doesn't need the word assignments anymore. And then we don't need the top sentence anymore.
And then we move that up to the top.
Now move this
Up to the top.
up here.
And then that also is copied from another slide, so we can delete that other slide.
Yes.
I believe that was slide 27.
Yeah, 24. Okay, so 24 just disappeared. No. Anybody to get too excited.
And now let's go back to slide 17 and look at it again to verify that it reads well. Do we need to make any adjustments to it?
Program standards or keep it program standards?
Great, yes. Let's make
Oh,
it
yeah,
consistent
program
program standards.
Yeah, because it's also important to note that in the pre-K 3 standards is program standard 6.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
We can
Yeah.
staff can be directed to
Yeah.
fix that throughout.
Okay, perfect.
Well, and that would be
It's
great.
easy.
It's all on the feasibility.
Tina has her hand up.
Tina.
I think there's still two concepts here, and I think we probably want both or I would like to see both in this section that is about program supports or program practice. So program practice, we want them to embed the tasks. The second part is about programs using what they've learned about embedding the tasks and their candidate performance and all of that to improve their program. It's about program improvement. So I feel like we need both in program practices, but I'm not sure they belong on the same recommendation. This one is about embedding, and the second one is about using what programs have learned to improve their work. And it might even be referring back to the local analysis, local scoring. That program practice now requires using what that outcomes from the analysis for improvement. And then that gets, I'm going to say the second part to that is that gets demonstrated during the accreditation process.
I agree with that idea. And I think they could fit on the same slide because we're talking about program standards. And I think earlier we talked about program standard 4, which is in relationship to how the program provides their candidates with feedback, monitors their results and whatnot for the individual candidates. And program standard 5 was in relation to doing that at the aggregate level. And so I think these could both be on the same slide because we took out program standard 5 and now it says program standards.
Yes, but are you saying have the embedded requirement and the using the analysis data on the same slide, or you?
Yes, and any other feedback that we have specific could be included. Just a thought. There's many ways to a thought. Yes.
Can I go? Just a personal preference would be more recommendations that are clear over few recommendations that are many things together. So I worry that in our desire to consolidate, we lose clarity. It's not as actionable. So that's just a personal preference and a noticing when we've gone through these, it kind of looks like, oh, we can see how this slide was moved over and it makes it more confounding and less actionable. And we spend all this time trying to parse it out. So that's just personal preference. I would prioritize clarity over reducing the number of items.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, so let's create a slide in between 17 and 18.
Tina, were you saying to move the second paragraph to another recommendation?
Yeah, I think that one is about using data for continuous improvement.
Yeah. And the bottom.
So
I'm scared to take the bottom to where it goes.
Which slide would that go with?
I think
Creating one because Rebecca just suggested, I think is a point well taken, right? We want to be clear.
I also believe that I really like slide 6 on the local assessment and all that it includes with collaboration across programs, faculty across programs and between institutions and school sites, etc. So I would like to refer back to that slide just in case if there are changes made that the use of TPA data isn't what it is more than what it currently is. Right now, that's part of what programs can use for continuous improvement. But I think we want a little bit more teeth in that to say, we want this on slide 6. And in program practice, we want programs to use the outcome of this for improvement purposes, and they need to demonstrate that in the accreditation process.
Could we move this slide to come right after the other one? What you're,
Oh, maybe. That however the local scoring, local analysis comes out, the next step is that this is used in slide 7 for program improvement.
For continuous improvement, right?
Uh-huh.
Specifically say.
And that improvement needs to be demonstrated via the
And the-
accreditation process.
And the reason why I suggest continuous improvement in place of program improvement is continuous improvement is used as the language in the common standard. So that's why I would suggest that we use continuous.
I'm just trying to ask. Common standard before.
Common standard report.
And go back up to the top and say the RDI TPA work.
And so I know it's after lunch. I know we're all getting heavy-eyed and we're struggling with our energy levels. So I'm gonna ask you to hang in there with me. We've got a few more to go.
I wouldn't say must monitor, I would say program monitor. Well,
Monitors.
The reflective activities piece go with the feedback.
we haven't figured out where that goes. You wanna work on that? We keep leaving it just in case. Okay, so just looking at the first top paragraph on slide 7. So we're placing it under the local scoring. Any other changes before we do a consensus vote? Do you accept the changes as written?
Just in the first paragraph you're asking? Okay.
Has her hand up.
Tina?
Could we add for clarity, the RDI TPA work group recommends that programs monitor and evaluate outcomes from local scoring / analysis.
Would everybody be okay if staff just specified, just included local scoring and analysis where appropriate throughout the document?
And embedding the TPA, and the rest goes on.
Good with that. Let's ask for thumbs if you're
Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side.
doing online.
Got 4 thumbs up online.
You good? Awesome.
Does anyone have a brilliant idea of where to include what Juliet is highlighting right now? Kathleen.
UDL, haven't we already said it?
I hope we did.
It's UDL, you get feedback and you get the right feedback just in time when you need it.
Right there at the bottom there.
Just what you.
I see a little bit space, yeah.
UDL, you got feedback and it's actionable. It's good pedagogy.
Could it go with slide 19?
Yes. Let's put it, just put it at the bottom for right now. Okay, so we're looking at slide 19. Would it just be added to the middle?
I think so. For the therefore statement.
Uh-huh. Okay with everyone?
Would that last line be a separate recommendation? Says also recommends current guidelines for acceptable support be revised.
I don't know about that. I think current
Throw in.
guidelines do recommend.
That I feel like was covered in the interim action.
Yeah, I feel maybe the original intent was we didn't feel like we could give that feedback along the way, and then so the guidelines needed to be adjusted so you could do the feedback in the top two paragraphs.
So maybe that is unnecessary.
Because it's been addressed in the interim actions.
Huh?
Substantive. I mean, I would say that this is, the guidelines have been and will be continued.
Will continue to be.
This is fairly well covered. Keep it in, drop it off.
Doesn't really matter. Okay. So I'm gonna recommend that we take it off for now.
If you're in agreement with taking it off, thumbs up. It's covered.
I've got 3 thumbs up online.
You got a thumbs down.
I don't like chopping anything off, just doesn't sound good. Like, I feel like if somebody took the time to put it in there, then it might need to be troubled a little bit more before we're just like, yeah, I'm done with that. You know what I mean?
And I would agree for the sake of consistency,
Yeah.
because in the other ones, even though it's addressed, we still stated it. For similar reasons, I would encourage us to leave it.
Put it that in that note in the speaker. I don't know if it matters.
That's right.
That attention. Seven, right?
Huh.
You better hurry up.
This one.
Do we vote on it now? Number 19? All right. Slide 19, if it looks good, as it currently exists, you know the rule, thumbs up, middle or down.
See 1 thumb, I see a mid, I see a thumb up. Tori, down.
Right, Tori, give us your thoughts.
I just want some clarification on the middle section there that candidates are going to be assessed on implemented feedback and be supportive with. I don't know what that means or what that looks like. I just would like some clarification.
Oh, I thought what we said, I'm gonna repeat it, but if I can still make sense at this point after lunch. So if you're giving a candidate some feedback that have you covered this particular element that's on the rubric? And they say, oh, I haven't done that. They go back and they do that before they submit it. That's what we're talking about, to be assessed on the implemented feedback. That's the implemented feedback when they've gone back and they've adjusted it.
So is that being assessed by who?
The program.
Okay, I don't understand. I'm sorry, I'm being dense here, but I still don't understand. So a program is going to say, yes, a candidate actually, like, is it a checkoff? Am I just saying, yes, my candidate went back and did the thing that I asked them to do? Or is it like I'm reading their TPA where I'm sorry, I'm still not clear on that.
So formative feedback is possible. And so the program provides formative feedback to the candidates. So if you look at a candidate's task, submission, whatever you want to say, an element of that task, you're looking at it and you say, okay, let's look at the rubric. Did you cover this? Yes, you did. Okay, great. Did you cover this? And the candidate says, oh, no, I didn't, or I didn't do it completely. And then they go back and they address it completely. That's what we're talking about there in that second paragraph. So if they implemented based on the formative feedback that they received from the program. Again, I know I'm confusing right now because it's after lunch. Does that make sense or am I not making sense?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Tina has her hand up.
Tina.
I was also concerned about the middle part, both for clarity as well as being over prescriptive. as well as being actionable. In other words, how do we ensure that this is happening in this particular way? And is it too detailed and prescriptive? Or necessary, I guess. Is it necessary? Yeah, questions.
I don't know. Let's talk about that. Is it actionable?
If I may. I think we've seen the thumbs up, the thumbs that have gone to the mid, and we've heard from the thumbs down. I would recommend that we move through the remaining recommendations. And even with those that are coming up subsequently, consider what is, if perfect is the enemy of the good. Given the time.
So those concerns have been duly noted in the notes component. And so we did vote. And so we're gonna move on from this. Okay.
Well, no, we've already taken a vote. Okay.
All right. So moving on to slide 20. We're almost there. Come on. Slide 20.
Orientation. Any clarification needed? Okay, let's do a consensus vote.
I see 1, 2, 3 online.
For you, Kate.
4 online. Okay.
21.
I can change that to program standards. Fine. Objection.
Yeah, so it says specific to interns, so this is not going to be offered to like a traditional student teacher then?
Go ahead, Kate.
I think the idea was that interns are like currently employed by a district. And student teachers aren't necessarily employed by a district. So if they're fully full-time students or at least part-time students, you can't like contact their part-time job and give them a sub day. But we would encourage the local districts and programs to support some sort of time and space for them to work and get the TPA done.
So, yeah, so just,
internet specific.
so just again, so a traditional student teacher, because they're not getting paid for their work, is not going to get a day off.
We can't reach out to all the Starbucks and all these.
I'm not talking necessarily about Starbucks. I'm talking about their school site. Would they be allowed to have a day off as well from their school site to complete the TPA? Yeah.
My understanding would be that would be an institution decision. Lots of institutions do. I know that UCSB do it. They don't have classes during that week when they're submitting. We give them certain times off. I think other places do as well.
It practices vary greatly across institutions. So for our MOUs, there's some sub time built in for PD and for TPA work.
So my experience was not that. Like I was a student teacher and like I needed to do my TPA while I was student teaching. There was nothing built in that was expected for me to have a day to complete, 8 hours of typing or whatever it needed to be, right? So that's what I would like.
So I would agree with what Josh has said, right? So if we're gonna do it for interns,
Yeah.
we do it for
Everybody else.
Have to be different words to release days then. No.
Is the point just to list for the support, or we're talking about release time?
I think we're specifically talking about release time.
Is that?
If we erased an interim pathways, that's an example. Like that's one, meaning there could be examples and then we don't have to change it.
We just say specific to the needs of candidates in multiple pathways.
Or just specific, yeah, specific to the needs of the candidate.
Period.
Has her hand up.
Tina.
One reason that this is in here that was specific to intern pathways is that oftentimes the program sponsors are the ones who have control over whether candidates can have time off to do particular kinds of things. But with intern pathways, the school districts are more in charge of whether they have time off or not. And I think that this recommendation was so that in partnership MOUs, that this would be included. So I just don't want the idea that interns really do need some release time to be lost.
And clarify for me how program sponsors, you said something about program sponsors, whether or not additional students are released their classroom?
I meant that typically traditional programs have more control over what time their candidates spend in classes and in classrooms than they do over what time interns spend in classrooms. When interns leave classrooms, that's money that districts need to provide for subs, etc. When student teachers leave classrooms, there isn't a monetary issue involved.
I mean, I agree with Tina. And I think the strongest we could be would be to say that we would expect the preparation programs to take into account the need. We would expect them to take into account the needs of students in their placement and their work loads during the period that they're supposed to be submitting this. But when it comes to interns, there needs to be a guarantee in the MOU that they can have time or whatever of some sort. I think the two things are different. We can recommend that institutions do consider the calendar as a whole and relieve some of the pressure on candidates when they're actually writing it and taking it. There shouldn't be any negotiation over whether interns get time.
So for me, it's an issue of equity. So I would say, I know this is not going to be a popular thing to say, but I would say, and I run an intern program, I would just eliminate that recommendation. That's just my point of view.
Because there isn't always an MOU, like a district intern program. It's an employment condition.
Rather than.
But there's also an
There's
MOU.
also an MOU.
There is an MOU.
An
with
MOU
the
between
district.
the IHE and the
Within the, with them and the intern, like if they're, I mean.
So our MOUs do stipulate that the teacher has to be released for at least 4 days for PD time and for time to complete their TPAs. We write that in our MOU.
Your MOU to who?
The districts. So when a candidate is placed.
But I'm saying sometimes the district runs their own program. So.
That's true.
But they would still have to be.
Folks, the MOU is cited as an example. It's
Yeah.
not specified.
So programs require form of support specific, take out the example stuff. Program standards would require forms of support. So program standards are applicable to the program, whether it's a university or someone else, to include release days for specific for interns. You're asking a program, an intern program, to have that is they meet that requirement through a program standard. What if the district just says, no, we're gonna hire your intern and we're not releasing them for that?
They can't hire them if they don't meet the conditions of the MOU. We oftentimes have said, for example, in charter schools where the charter candidate is not engaging in a face-to-face format with students, we say, thank you very much. Yeah, go someplace else.
I'm just thinking, does the commission have the authority to force districts to give their employees release time?
Well, here's an example of where we could, because that is going to come up. right? Where we have enforcement authority and in this case, that might be part of the staff analysis that we present. And the commission may decide, for example, to adhere to the spirit of this while not overextending our authority. I wouldn't worry too much about how this plays out down the line. I think at the heart of this, we have a call out that interns are teachers of record that are in the classroom 5 days a week. And so there should be some sort of provision or accommodation or differentiation for how the TPA works with that.
I also think they have the higher failure rate, if I recall. I was not the one who put this forward, but I think I was in the group and I recall being about that.
These are the intern program standards.
Well, then Tori's had her hand up for a long time. Tori?
I just wanted to say, for the sake of equity, the intern programs are not the same as traditional pathway programs. And if we're thinking about equity, those candidates in intern programs who, as Adam said, are teachers of record, I think we need to call them out separately for the purpose of equity, to call them out separately for additional supports that they need that traditional pathway candidates might or might not need.
Gosh.
So then going back to Kate's example of Starbucks, then it's not equitable because then the student teachers in the traditional pathway is then going to Starbucks to work 4 hours, 6 hours a night after a day, because they are, Adam, in the classroom 5 days a week, student teachers, whether they're interns or not. So then how is that then equitable if an intern then gets this time off and then they don't get the Starbucks time off?
I'm thinking about public comments also that we received from people in intern programs. That's about the time off that felt different to me than public comments from people in traditional preparation programs.
All right, well, do we want to approve this in its current form?
That's my
Thumbs up, thumbs to the middle, thumbs down. So for me, I'm a thumbs down.
There aren't intern program standards, there's only intern preconditions.
So then what program
I
standards?
have 2 thumbs up online to approve it as it is. I have 4. We have 4 online. Need to hear from Josh and from Ursula.
I mean, I believe in what's good for some is probably good for all. And so we're saying what's good for some in this is not. And I hate to be the one that thumbs down this, but that's exactly how I feel. That just because you're in a traditional pathway, maybe there's this expectation that you're some kind of student that has unlimited funds or you don't have this, that, or the other thing, but that's simply not the case. That time off, if it's going to be offered to interns, it should be offered to everybody.
Ditto. Just you.
Did in the bottom.
Noted. All right, moving right along, slide 22.
So this is specific to lower performing programs.
Oh, what's left out of here is that what we mean is TPA pass and fail rates. TPA is not mentioned anywhere in here, but that's what we intended. Yeah, we were too proud of ourselves. So in the parentheses, it's including TPA pass and fail rates. Yeah.
I'm wondering, and maybe I'm reaching, but do 22, 23, 24, and 25 all seem to be talking about similar things? Is this a place where we could consolidate or it's better left?
I think we purposely left them separate.
We left them separate because
they were just so slightly different.
Okay.
we did. Yeah, we did.
So I heard, let's add the acronym TPA in there somewhere.
Oh, I just did it.
It was
Sorry. But I did it without an approval.
That's slide 22, is that correct?
Yes.
Let me refresh.
I'd just like to add for this one of the additions in Senate Bill 1263 was to add a requirement to report on TPA pass rates. So that's in 44320.2 D9. This adds a nice piece to it, which is address what you see in accreditation.
Okay.
I wanted to clear, like, could someone tell me from the group, why did you want them separate? Like, what was the rationale for making those two separate? The two that we were, I think it was 22 and 23, we could combine, but then you said you wanted them specifically separated.
We addressed two different things, and so I can clarify a little bit, but someone else could probably do a better job. So the first is that it's lower performing programs, like, so if they're on that side of the curve, CTC defines that cutoff, not us. That gets reported, and we deal with it in accreditation, but then 23.
Everybody.
Ben could speak on 23. I could talk about 23.
I went to the.
Oh, the program matrix for accreditation is a new thing I learned about, so Ben.
So we were talking about ISPs and A's. We were
Introduce.
talking about practice assess, sorry.
It's the IPA.
It's the IPA. Practice assess, so for accreditation, programs have to submit how for each TPE element, we introduce it to students, our future teachers, how they practice it and how they assess it. So the spirit of this was about being able to use the TPA, the TPA, if it's embedded in coursework and we're looking at it as assessment, because right now we're not allowed to use the TPA in the matrix for submission for accreditation, which is why tasks are duplicated.
Yeah.
Hit the nail on the head.
Good job, Ben.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Yeah, and that's
I
better.
didn't even know this was that. I was just like tuned out. I'm sorry. You were not allowed to. Julian even verified it because we got told we couldn't.
Change that.
I think it does get used, but
I better tell Cheryl.
I did a double, I did a double check and. So.
Okay. We're going back to 22.
Let's assume
This one's talking about lower performing programs.
accreditation needs to address that.
Seeing no clarifying questions, let's call for the question. Are you in support of slide 22?
Sorry, I just don't, what is possibly resulting in findings or stipulations in the accreditation?
So that
The
means,
decisions, the team.
so that means yeah, exactly. So when you're undergoing accreditation, if it was determined that they were outside of the parameters on their TPA scores, then there could be a stipulation or a finding. Struggle currently is that that language is not in the standards. And so when that comes up, they say, well, you know, that language is not in there, so we can't have a finding or a stipulation.
Thank you.
Thumbs online. How are we doing there? Thumbs up, down, thumbs to the side. 1, 2, 3. Al, how are we doing? We got 4 thumbs up.
Hey, all right, that one passes.
All right, so now 23 is the new one that Ben was just describing, which is talking about being able to use the TPA assessment data as one of the assessment components in the matrix. Any questions? Consensus vote?
Thumbs up, thumbs. Oh, we got 4 thumbs up.
All right, moving on to number 24. So this one is looking at recommending that the CTC adopt new language related to, do we say Common Standard 4? Yeah, we do need to emphasize the use of TPA data across all programs. Any clarifying questions? I think that one's very straightforward.
If they don't put it in the standard, they can't hold them accountable in accreditation. That's why that one.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
That's the why. Okay, let's take a consensus vote.
4 thumbs up online and
It's really.
Okay, we're looking at slide 25 now. Should we just say program standards?
That's right.
So this is about supporting candidates.
Why we added the line at the bottom is that if you don't like put that it applies to accreditation, then like so too big.
Yeah, but our slide just there. Yes.
So this tells us what happens if you don't support.
Okay.
Okay. Any other clarifying questions? Let's take a consensus vote on slide 25. Waiting for some of our online. Oh, I'm sorry, Tina.
She have to put her thumb up.
She has a hand up and a thumbs up.
Oh, I was very quick clarification, maybe the first line, instead of completed the performance assessment, just say completed the TPA, because we use TPA everywhere else.
Oh, yeah.
The second one, if everybody agrees, the effectiveness of support must be addressed through the accreditation process, possibly, and just leave out through the COA. I'm not sure we need that, but,
Yeah.
You don't need that.
Yeah.
That's true.
and then I'm a thumbs up.
Are the changes that were just made amenable? Please show your vote.
Let's see, 4 thumbs up online.
Great. All right, we're moving to slide 26, which is about the survey. And remember that we wrote down the 5 different wrote down the 5 different components of the original law. So questions specifically going back and referencing those components. Are there any changes or recommendations or clarification needed on this one?
Just a quick question. Incorporated within the model. That makes it sound like it's part of the assessment, and I think what we meant was that when the TPA is submitted, it's within the submission process. It's not in the assessment itself.
In the submission process.
Yeah. That we would capture not just the class. Yeah, that works.
Model. Okay. Is everyone comfortable with that change?
I see 3 thumbs up, 4.
All right. Any other questions or clarifications? Okay, so let's look for consensus regarding slide 26 and the implementation of the survey.
I see more thumbs up online.
Okay, let's move to slide 27.
Exactly.
This
Syndrome at the.
So this came up at our last meeting and was actually very well received and received positive feedback from the commission regarding the need to study AI and the impact that it may have, that it will have on the future of the TPA. Are there any clarifying statements, anything you want to add, questions you might have? Seeing none, we'll call for the consensus vote.
So
Al, what do you think, Al? Aye, yes, no?
Only the appropriate fingers.
We need one more from Al online.
Isn't this, isn't it now called A1?
Oh, yes, A1.
It's A1 now.
A1.
So I guess we need to
A1.
clarify.
A1.
Clarification.
Our leader.
One's on.
Oh, right. What are we talking about?
Talking about.
What's her name?
Yeah.
Didn't have a chance to speak.
You've not seen the stuff online.
You want to speak to your
Are in the back, so.
Some comedians
Okay.
sit there and say.
We've got to open for public
Love
comment.
it.
Yep.
Sorry.
You have to do public comments first.
We're gonna do public comments.
Okay, we will now open for public comments. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon. Are there any public comments?
Like, no.
No public comments. We'll move. Okay, we will come up with our next set of expectations. So we have already shifted a little bit, right? And instead of doing a prioritization vote, we're looking at a consensus vote. So it'll be put out to you after this meeting, the finalized recommendations. We're not asking you to have the lens of prioritization. Have the lens of whether you approve of the recommendation. Does that make sense? And then we will restructure them based on content and where they fit together to make the most sense when delivering and explaining the recommendations, rather than organizing by priority.
And staff will go through and make the language Jeff talked about as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Staff will, absolutely.
Staff is gonna do an amazing job.
Staff go.
My dig about sleeping on the job. Right. That's what I get. Going back.
So with that, we move to closing remarks.
All right, any closing remarks?
And bravo. Wow, you all have worked it. I'm so thrilled to have been witness to it. Thank you. Oh, wait, I've got closing remarks from Anna Marie.
Oh, she did say she wanted to say something later.
She did. Go ahead.
Me?
Whatever you want to say, and I'll just.
drag it out a little bit here.
Go ahead.
You know, when I was born,
It all started.
It's been such an honor to get to meet you all, from the paper application process to sort of meeting you in person and watching this group evolve. And you know, I just hope that the work is not over. I mean, this is the part of setting the broader frame. We're gonna get into some messy, sticky, fun work of now translating this into like a physical thing that is in reality. And we hope we can bend your ears and hook you into some ongoing activities that do come up. Been an honor. That's what I have to say. And we're all awesome.
Can I say something? I just want to say thank you to the staff. I mean, I know that these groups can be like wrangling cats, and I just want to say thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of the staff. Hard work is really appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for trusting us to guide you through this process. Had quite the unique perspective, having been out on that side and now being up here, but just really appreciate the thoughtfulness. And just, I feel like throughout, people have been keeping our candidates at the center and our PK-12 students that we're preparing the candidates to serve. So thank you.
Kristen, anything?
What a pleasure to get to witness, like Mary said, just the way that it flowed there at the end. I know it was a real slog today, and it just really felt like things fell into place, and there's so much to be proud of from the work that I'll be working on some of the data as we roll this out. So thank you.
I don't know if you saw it, but when you were doing the recommendations about data and continuous improvement, Kristen had a giant smile.
Energy source over there. That's a good thing. We need it, and we've got it. That's good. All right, I have some closing remarks from Commissioner Anna Marie Francois, who says, "Thank you for your thoughtful and collaborative work. It's been inspiring to watch. Your recommendations reflect a deep commitment to both the goals of this effort, recommendations that are focused, streamline the requirements, and are directly actionable, and guided by an essential set of core guiding principles that ground the work. As I listened to your deep, reflective conversations, the guiding principles that showed up most vividly for me were: 1, commitment to supporting meaningful candidate learning rather than mere evaluation by intentionally prioritizing the educative value of the TPA. This ensures the TPA process serves as a developmental tool focused on candidate growth. 2, the integration of shared responsibility among education partners. This really reinforces the importance of authentic partnership, collective support, and accountability in shaping strong, reflective novice teachers. 3rd, prioritizing an asset-based approach in TPA design, implementation, and support systems, which affirms candidates' diverse identities, contexts, and experiences as valuable to our profession. And finally, most importantly, your conversations, analyses, and recommendations reflect a sincere commitment to humanizing the TPA experience for everyone involved. You are reminding us that a fair and rigorous assessment can and should be supportive and respectful. Positioning the TPA in this way will surely make a positive difference in how candidates engage with and grow through the formative process. As I watched and listened, I was also inspired by the development of your learning community. Your engagement and reflective conversations about something meaningful, informed, respectful negotiation, and collective meaning-making mirrors what we hope aspiring teachers will take up throughout their development. Simply put, I watched you, quote, practice what you preach. Don't always do that, or we don't always do that, so thanks for reminding me that it does happen. Thank you. Lastly, I want to give a great big shout out to Mandy, Ursula, and Juliet for their steady leadership throughout this process. Y'all are rock stars. All of you are. On behalf of the commission, please accept our heartfelt gratitude for all you do and all you've contributed to this important work. Good.
All right, what are we gonna do with the cake?
Eat it.
All right.
Put it in.
All right, so with that, having no further business but eating cake, we now adjourn the April 2025 RDI TPA Work Group Meeting. Congratulations, everyone.
Yay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bad, they're missing the cake.